We don't hear it, or I don't hear it.
Of importance to millions of
Oh,
people
there
who
it
are
is.
continually pale and washed out, weak and run down. Doctors will tell you that these conditions are often caused by a deficiency of iron. The iron you need to keep you physically fit and mentally alert. Medical studies show that 2 out of 3 women and many, many men lack the daily iron your body requires in a form your body can easily use and put to work. Every dose gives you more than your daily minimum iron requirement. We are awake, we are awake, we are not alone. We are striving for more. So if you're not getting the iron your body needs, if you feel weak, run down, and are easily upset, wake up! Start taking iron today.
Thank God it's Friday.
It's Friday, my dudes.
It is Friday, my dudes, and a TGIF to you all. Thank God it's flat. Welcome to Iron Realm Media and the Have No Sphere. We have got an exciting guest for you all this evening, Mr. Rodrigo Ferrari-Nunes. But first, let's jump in and say hello to the other fellows. Joining me this evening, starting off with Mr. L.C. King, just because he happened to be lucky enough to have his camera on right now. Lucas, how the hell are you, sir?
I do. It's on and off when I pick the right moment. But yeah, I'm doing good. Looking forward to the show. Looking forward to a good conversation. So glad everyone's here. And yep.
Awesome. Exciting. Let's say hello to Mr. Walter Johnson, also known as Flat Earth Head, because he made the mistake of turning his camera on just a little too early. Walter, how are you, sir?
You got me. Hello, Josh. Hello, everyone else. Hello out there in the tubes land. It's here. We've done it. We made it Friday again. So the energies seem to be getting better. Let's hope that continues to be the case. But as you said, we have a guest and there's other folks here to say hey to. So let us proceed.
Yes, it does. I am feeling a little bit lighter the last couple days. I think I had one good purge, and feeling much better. So let's say hello, Mr. Zachary Zabala, the nomad, Mr. Too Nice for Rice himself. Good times for all. They're on YouTube. Zach, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, guys. Not too bad. Kind of a relaxed day, I guess. Didn't fall back asleep till, I don't know when. And then woke up at like 2. And just, it was one of those, I'm not going to do a whole lot today. Watered some plants, walked by the river, checked on the rocks. Man, that clay is a pain in the butt. It takes forever to clean up. It's almost like you need Rust-Oleum or something. I don't know. I'm going to look into it. But yeah, good day. Beautiful day here again. I mean, geez, oh Pete's. This place is just as close to heaven as I found as far as weather goes.
Do you have any
I'm
diatomaceous
really
earth laying around? Diatomaceous earth might be a good little abrasive agent for cleaning up clay. Just a thought.
Now we'll look into that. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's real cheap. Buy it by the bagful. So our guest tonight, Lucas, why don't you introduce our guest, because you're the one that made this awesome thing happen. This is really exciting for us. We've been wanting to do this for a good long while, and you've actually been speaking to Rodrigo sort of behind the scenes and just reached out and made it happen. So I'm going to put you right there in the spotlight.
Yeah, it's sort of been behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. So yeah, I've been on Rodrigo's show as well. So glad you're here, Rodrigo, and sort of
Couple of times.
Yeah. So we've been talking about a bit of behind the scenes. We've been talking a bit about mythology and a few things like that. So yeah, it's good to have you here, and thanks for joining. And yeah,
you're welcome. Of course, anytime. I mean, you guys should just ask whenever you want, and I'm happy to come and talk to you guys, obviously. And I know, of course, Zach's work from Globebusters, because all the time, and wonderful stuff, and I'm learning a lot as I go through my own little journey here. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, guys.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure.
The doctor is in.
So what do you want to know? Yeah, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor in social and cultural anthropology, right? That has a whole bunch of, particulars. It's a particular thing. It's different. It's one of the things when I started talking to people in the movement, I guess you can call it, or in the community. One of my motivations is that I had heard so much from these kind of stereotypical positions against people with what they call education, and no nuance really on knowing the differences between the kinds of degrees you can get in how universities actually work, which for me was something that I don't come from the American system. I'm not American, I'm not Canadian or English or whatever, where you have these universities set up. I come from Brazil, which is completely different. So for me, it was already kind of quite a thing to go to university, to get away from my own culture and move away into a completely new situation, leaving everything behind. And then I moved on from place to place. I ended up in Canada from when I first came to the States to study. But it was already like with the type of mindset where you're like, I want to see how the university works as well. I wanted to study how it worked and understand it. So I ended up joining these kind of political, ended up being elected executive for the Graduate Student Society. It's like a student-run society at University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And then started to study how the board of governors, the corrupt people who run the university, actually do their business. And we did lots of activism, sort of exposing how the university was run and the differences between the different segments, like how the sciences are getting tons of crazy money for, they were selling patents. They're just a branch of the industry. And you have like pharmaceutical sciences there, like a massive building, hundreds of millions of dollars put in the building, and the province pays the money, right? The province matches the donor with the donor is the pharmaceutical industry. So it's like public money going into a facility which is just meant to train people to get into the pharmaceutical industry. That is in a whole other area of campus where anthropology is. Anthropology is like in a whole different part, and everybody's very skeptical of that, what's going on the scientific side. So it's very divided and very tense in many ways, like the university environment. It's not something so black and white as usually we hear from when we hear people who, they have an axe to grind, I guess. But in my position, I realized that as an anthropologist, we're very close in social, especially in social culture anthropologists. There are differences. There's physical anthropology where you have biological anthropology, and the whole theory of evolution plays a big role there. And we get training on that, but we're the skeptics from that kind of, and we look at culture. So we are really, because we look into the the colonial system, how it grew and how horrendous it is, how violent it is, we have a very critical take on the system itself, like in general, because we study, how it came to be from the 14th, 15th century and so onward. That is very important for the indigenous peoples who got affected by all this all over the world, which is the main focus of anthropology. The anthropologists, or social and cultural anthropology, are the only people actually in the whole of academia, apart from some smaller disciplines, they're branched off, kind of like indigenous studies, something called indigenous studies, and in folklore, which is sort of similar, are the only people who are looking at the diversity of culture around the world. So shamanic religious systems, ways of thinking, ways of relating to animals and other beings, that they're completely different than the materialistic paradigm of science. So I thought that was, that is very much on the same line with a lot of people who are critical of the system. But I wanted to kind of add that nuance in a way, because I kept on hearing from people that I really enjoyed listening to and learned from, these things about history and education, some other things that I really disagreed. And I was like, at some point I thought, I wish I really had a chance to talk to Jaren, to that guy, so I can have this discussion, and which was one of the first things I did to kind of talk to Jaren in Amsterdam. And I had a chance. We had a whole discussion about some how I think some things he says, which is very minimal detail. He needs to get a little bit more of a look at it, closer look. So, that's the kind of stuff that really stimulates me to get to talk to people who have different ideas and who want to make good points and want to present their information. And then, I don't know. I think my problem is really that I'm sometimes a bit too critical, and I regret being a bit too critical sometimes, because I don't take into consideration sometimes what people might feel about some things, some of the ways I say some things. So basically, everyone's got to work on themselves. It's kind of, I'm always on this kind of critical, self-critical analysis. I think is very important to see how we're all moving along a path, I guess.
There are so many people out there. Sorry, go ahead, Lucas.
I was just going to ask, the people that you went to university with, like the people in that anthropology sort of side of things, did they have they followed you, or are you still in communication with them because they're actually open-minded, or did they go a different route, sort of thing?
They are. I do have communications with some people, but things have gone a bit wild after the scandemic thing going on. Mm-hmm. I have kept in touch with some people. There's, for instance, the whole story, which I think you have you're a bit critical of the work of Stellium 7. Like, I guess you've seen some of the stuff with the Heartstones and some of the other the Titans and so on. Now that is one of the weirdest sort of sets of information that I've ever seen in my life, and there's it's very odd. But in anthropology, like for instance, my supervisor at the University of British Columbia, Bruce Granville Miller, he has a book called Be of Good Mind. He has different books that he edited. There's another one called Extraordinary Anthropology as well, which is quite interesting. But on Be of Good Mind, he talks about the Coast Salish people. This is the Pacific Northwest, and they have this whole story of the Transformers, which is real. So they say it's a real thing that turned people and other beings into rock. Mm-hmm. That is, and there's many of these rocks. There's a rock that looks like a snake. They say it's a snake. There's a rock that looks like a medicine man, and some other rocks. There's all these stories. For them, they're quite real stories. It's not something they're discarding. There's also, for instance, look at this. Like, I went once to Northwest BC, close to a place called Prince Rupert in an island. Where there's like 400 people in a village, an Indian village. And the professor who is leading this kind of master sort of expedition thing was a Marxist. So he dismisses anything that's religious or spiritual by default. we sat on their kind of longhouse in the little meeting place, and this elder gave us a story. And the prof told us to dismiss part of the story in a way. It's like, oh, no, that's mumbo jumbo. And that part that he told us to dismiss was all about the flood, how they had all these connections with other indigenous peoples that they met, who they had the same language, the same words, the same all the stuff that they knew they had disconnected in a great flood. And there's all this other stuff. There's like this really all the interesting stuff. The prof was like, no. Let's just look at resource extraction and how they how they get fish from the water and so on and so forth. And I wanted to look at the cosmology, how they look at how they felt about animals, how they and all these other things. And the prof forced me essentially to, which was at the end he couldn't prevent me from learning what I came to learn in that place from the people who came to talk to me. So instead of, there was this thing there, the silence is a big deal. You may be with four guys like we are, like in a circle, and someone says something, and then there's a silent moment. That moment is the moment where Westerners will break. Westerners don't know how to value silence. They want to speak. And this is one of I was aware of this. So when I was with the indigenous guys, and the prof said, you need to talk to the hunters. You're gonna have to talk to the hunters, see how the environment changed. I was like, okay, fine. And maybe you get a hunting expedition with them. Maybe you go hunting with them. Blah 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 blah. And so there's this whole thing about me having to go beg for it or ask for it or something like this, and which was something I was not going to do. I knew it was going to break the protocol. I was like, no, I need to be invited. There's no way I cannot ask for this. So by hanging out with them, at some point they kind of felt compelled to get me to ask me to go with them. And through that kind of journey, I learned about how they felt about many stories of and being out in the open and understanding the landscape and understanding kind of Western civilization, the differences, things that were happening to the environment. So I don't know how I got into this tangent. I have no idea why I'm talking about this. So, but I think it's interesting for some reason. But it's just well, I guess you're talking about academia. And so I'm telling you, like, even for instance, that situation in anthropology, like the other students who were with us, they all had their own particular position. They're all really kind of critical of the professor, very critical. But they had they understood this stuff about indigenous cosmologies. They're very into this. They're really the students now, the people from my generation, at least who went to school, they really are respectful of all these other ways of knowing and the different cosmologies that exist, and have actually problems with everything that is what we may call the system. But there's some very critical limitations that I learned over the years with my study of cosmology. When I start talking about, look at this is fake. The stuff that NASA is showing is fake. And I didn't get into real trouble in terms of people confronting me. I made a presentation about paradigm shift. I made a claim that what we're looking at is a paradigm shift, a potential paradigm shift, and the end of the global ontology or what we may call the ontology of the globe, the idea that we are in the globe, affecting the way we are as beings inside that. And that whole thing in anthropology is huge because people talk about the global, right? Because it became a discourse, globalization. It's something globalist, right? All this stuff. Anthropologists take a critical look at this in neoliberalism, but they talk about things being global and local. But what they mean by global is that it's systemic in a way that's across the world, right? But there's a problem because we're not on a globe, so you cannot call this thing global. You have to call it systemic. You have to call world system. You have to change. You have to get rid of basically the whole of the global. Everything is called global is an invention from this period that is tied to this colonial, what I call now the colonial cosmology, because it is, which is what is very bizarre. The anthropologists who are very critical of the colonial system and everything about it, the church and the state and so on, they turn some sort of blind eye, or they don't notice that what NASA is showing them, all this other stuff, space itself is basically another huge deception. They're being from this generation, many of them cannot, at least from what I know so far, many of them cannot see that. However, there are people on my Patreon who are professional anthropologists with academic positions who know what's going on.
That's encouraging.
It's interesting. It's interesting when you say, well, when I hear the word sort of global, or people using that, especially in sort of the news and those sort of, you can see where it's coming from, and you're right, it is a sort of, it's almost like it's now a recognizable fingerprint of these elites, or whatever you want to call them, but it's definitely there. You can sort of, as soon as I hear it, I'm like, that's them. They're putting their fingerprint again. And the more that people sort of break away from the idea of the globe and things, they will be able to recognize where these guys are coming from and recognize their fingerprint as such.
Now, I wanted to ask you, Rodrigo, you're saying anthropology and science are kind of button heads in academia.
Depends. Yeah.
Were you ever taught about the Fibonacci sequence in any of your college courses?
Yeah.
See, that's insane. When I had my awakening, it was because I heard a video. I was learning about the Fibonacci sequence, and it was a Yale biology professor complaining to another professor, the head of his department, saying, why was I never taught this? Why is this everywhere in nature, especially in biology, the way things are growing, and there's this sequence that's been around us everywhere, but you never taught it to us. He's like, I find that very, that's strange. There's something wrong here. Why isn't this being taught?
In my case, I think in anthropology they would talk about this, because when you study calendrics in general and sky and different cosmologies, looking at the sky, you get across the pi and pi and phi, and all these ratios come around. Especially in archaeology and looking at Egyptology, it's something I study as well a little bit. Look at what they were doing. I look at a lot of archaeology over the years, but not read a lot of archaeology and watched a lot of archaeologists making presentations about places, but I haven't been on the field as an archaeologist, because it's part of our background. And in that field, you have also tensions from the materialists and people who are more spiritually inclined. That is just everywhere across the board. Apart from what you see in what's called biological anthropology, which is people who buy into Darwinian evolution. And then you have, it's a branch of physical anthropology, which we also learn about, but that in the social and cultural side, we take a social constructivist approach, where we just think that they're making stuff up. They're just making up theories, and we know how they make it, and we write about that. We study them. But, they're sharing a bunch of stuff with us, but they lose what the difference is that these guys in physical anthropology and even in archaeology and biological anthropology, they are not looking at cultural and social and cultural systems and linguistics. So there's a whole branch of anthropology, which is linguistic anthropology. That's what I also study. And I did, that's one of the things I specialize on. That's why I had a classics degree on the side. I was learning Latin, Latin and Greek, but I focused on Latin for that time, because I had that interest in linguistics and music is something I was doing before I even went into university. That I had some recording contracts or something, deals with a band, pop rock band. It was really funny. We traveled and we did all these things. It was another life. But yeah, it is. It is in the field of social and cultural anthropology that people take a serious look at religion and experiences, religious experiences. So, for example, my supervisor again at the University of British Columbia, in that book I told you, Extraordinary Anthropology, he talks about there's many experiences there from the other people. There's all the stuff going on from that they happen in the field, which is spiritual experiences. And for this guy at the University of British Columbia, who's a full professor, and he went to Brown and so on. He in Arizona, he was working in a litigation to help indigenous peoples get their land back, essentially. And in order to prove that they owned that land, they had to find the ancestors who had lived there. They needed to find their names in the register, and they couldn't find. There's like old records, they couldn't possibly find it, and they didn't know the names. And then the ancestors showed up on his bed. The spirits of the ancestors showed up and said, "These are the names, and this is how you're going to find it. And these are," and he went on and found it, and he writes about.
Oh wow!
It. So you have this whole side of anthropology where people, and my other supervisor was a linguistic anthropology in Aberdeen when I did my PhD. Supervisor is like the guy who they would read all your stuff and they would comment. They make all kinds of critical comments. And this guy held no bar. He was one of the most critical that I ever got. It was the best. For me, it was the best. I love that kind of stuff. How people get picked apart.
You enjoyed that teacher, didn't you? Because he pushed you.
Yeah, he was good. He was great at this. And he would never give you a compliment. He didn't have a very, very, very good reason. Very, very, very good reason.
Yeah, that was my favorite teacher ever. I don't think she complimented me, but maybe one time. Mm-hmm. And I tried impressing her every day. You know?
Yeah.
She played me like a fiddle.
Yeah. In this case, it wasn't, I had to fight for some things that he had to mediate. Because there was another guy involved who was in music, and he didn't have the kind of theoretical background to grasp some ideas, and he tried to kind of complain about certain aspects of my thesis which were absolutely core and couldn't change, and he wanted me to dismiss it, and I ended up writing a overkill email which was like 40 pages long, explaining the history of that idea in anthropology and how he was completely wrong. And then this guy Alex, because I've been talking about, he looked at it and he's like, "Okay, you don't need to send this to him. Just forget about what he said. Just do what you're doing. You're right." It's like it get a little bit too intense because I cared about my project, and this is one of the things they tell you, at least in my PhD. When I got to the university, there was this whole session which was just for the students, and they were telling me that the project was mine. That no matter what these other guys, there was going to be these other scholars. Maybe they had an idea they wanted to change something. If you felt like they shouldn't, it is yours. They're like, you got to put your foot down. You can't. Don't be bullied.
Yeah, this is your name.
It's your thing
at the top of the paper.
So I just made sure that I took that advice. But there's tensions everywhere, and what you see, universities are like this. There are places where people share information. Everyone reads something and they talk about it. The good things about it. The good things about it. You meet people who are very interested in learning about certain subjects that for instance, there's many things there. Oral histories of indigenous peoples. That was like something I really love to study, and it's great when you have people who are really into that. But then you're required to write something as well, and to have an opinion and all these other things. Now, those things are good. The fact that there are grades is not good. The fact that there's hierarchies and money involved, and grant money and so on, that's not evenly distributed, that's bad. We know that, everybody knows this. The fact that there's libraries with lots of books that you can take and you can look at, that's great. That you can literally, one of my favorite things at University of Utah, when I was there, they have like this big square library, huge library. And I would just I was like, okay, I'm just going to walk randomly. I'm going to see what I just run into. And I remember that I ran into like this huge shelf of Voltaire, this huge shelf, like, it's like, wow, okay. And huge shelf like Isaac Asimov, like he had a huge bunch of stuff and other things, like just random things I end up picking up. And it was really enjoyable. And it was something about intuition. Like you go around and you can just literally grab a bunch of things and take them home and scour through. It's like that moment that you for me, I took it quite seriously at the time. I wasn't partying like crazy, for at least for the beginning when I was married. And that allows you, if you want that space that you can study something, you can find it. The problem is, of course, that it really depends on what courses you're taking, what classes you're taking, what professors will be in a course. It can be the same course taught by a different professor, will be shit.
Yep,
that kind of
totally different.
Absolutely.
And so it's really, when I was working with the students, we were receiving new graduate students. I was always kind of giving that kind of advice. Be very, very careful of the professors that you choose, and ask from your students. And what is really strange about graduate school, okay, it's like this, and it's something that they don't tell you usually. And I always saw this many of these ceremonies when graduate students are coming in, because I had the kind of official position. And they, at first, they have this kind of, some people coming in and saying, how you're so good, you're the brightest and the best, blah, 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 blah. And it really doesn't matter what discipline it is. It's all kind of thrown together. Sometimes it's just sciences, sometimes just humanities, sometimes all together. And so they give you this whole kind of pep talk, oh, la, 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 la. You see this everywhere. Then it morphs into this kind of things you need to know to do well in your degree. And then it's like, you can get totally depressed. You're going to need this. You're going to need a friend. You're going to need la, la, la. You're going to be overworked. You're going to not be able to sleep. You're not be able to pay your bills. La, 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 la. You can die. La, la, la. It's like, what the heck? It was like this whole thing. If you need mental health assistance, if you're a woman, you got to be careful. You can't, walking down campus, there's this people who can walk with you so you don't get raped. There's all this stuff going on, right? And then I met people in the sciences. There's this girl that I dated for a little bit, who was a Persian girl, and she was breaking the backs of rats for a prof.
Oh.
That's her. She got in and she was like, oh yeah, we're doing spinal cord research. Oh, what do you do? Oh no, you literally grab these rats and you break their backs, and then we study them. And she was just she was just falling apart. She was having,
I couldn't do that.
She was forced to do. She was going crazy. And that's, the sciences is all messed up. It's really messed up.
I struggled in biology with the fetal pig dissection. It really bothered me.
With the what?
Really did. Fetal pig dissection. Yeah. I was actually the professor's pet there, and that was my main course, was biology. Mm-hmm. So he had me passing them out, and I was just like, holding down the gag. It was rough. He even had us doing the old Vaseline under the nose to keep the smell down. I mean, Vicks salve under your nose to keep the smell of the formaldehyde and the carcasses down. Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Go ahead.
When you were at university, you probably went flat then, were you?
No. I mean, I had everything to really understand. It was funny because there was this course, there's this professor who, she's like was a young professor at the time. She had this thing, which is she was showing me how to do mental maps, and she was saying, we need to try to think in visual terms and with different symbols, and trying to express your ideas that way, and then write and study something this way, modeling and whatever. And then she showed me something she put together in grad school. And it had a model of the Hebrew cosmology with the flat earth and the Sheol, and it had the firmament and everything. And I remember at the time I was, what is this, like 2002? No, 2004. It was at the time of the tsunami, and we studied the tsunami story. And I remembered that I had, the elements I had there was all how the media was controlling everyone, and all the kinds of things that we kind of, basic things that we know now. We looking very critically at media, but we couldn't. I was still trying to figure out what NASA was about at the time, because it wasn't my main focus. I was looking more at spirituality, but because it has a big merging cosmology, there has something you have to figure out what the stars are at some point. And that's why at one point I took astronomy, and this is when I started getting very skeptical. I saw what astronomy was. I saw they showed me the Foucault pendulum, and I was like, it's just,
No doubt. That's awesome.
I was like, this is really weird. I saw that their grad students were retarded. Essentially, I was the course was terrible, and it was really strange. And there were some things I couldn't yet wrap my head around, like things like they were showing. But the professor, at the very least, he said, we don't know that the sun is a fireball. That is just a theory. Obviously, we don't know. And it was still before exoplanets when I did that, before they invented that one. But it wasn't until 2015 that everything started making more sense. But I had seen many models of flat Earth cosmology. That was the Hebrew one. It was not the first one I saw, obviously, but because any model that you see, there's a book by Levi Strauss.
All of them.
Yeah, there's one that I really like from the Bororó Indians in Brazil, which is Levi Strauss, who lived to be almost 100 years old. This is an anthropologist who wrote about it, and it's there. I mean, it's quite clear. It's everywhere, So, but we don't see it. It's crazy. Like we miss that, and it's so obvious, especially in Vancouver. You can see so far. You can see the mountains way in the back, looking north. It's flat Earth in your face there.
So when so when you're learning about all these ancient cultures or the anthropology side of things, as soon as sort of flat Earth came into play, then I suppose everything started to really click for you then, didn't it? That there was actually a timeline you could follow, or their stories start to make more sense. And
well, it became very exciting, because what happens is that the only thing that colonialism would have had on indigenous peoples before is the idea that they discovered what the cosmos is like. They finally said, oh no, it's a heliocentric model. All these people are tripping. And then we have science from then on, right? There's this kind of triumph of enlightened science or something like this that they connected to Newton. There's there's nothing original about Newton and calculus, all these other things. The ancients already had this. He just basically formalized it in some sort of, and people gave him credit for things that others had come up with.
Well, I'm thinking that's nearly through all of it, even over when you're looking at, say, the ideas of electricity with, Galvani and Volta and all these guys. And all of a sudden I'm finding, stuff written in Sanskrit thousands of years before that tells you how to build a battery and do electrolysis. And then you find out that, people like Tesla and that were actually studying Sanskrit. And same with that Voltaire guy. He was actually studying Sanskrit. So these guys, it seems to me that these guys, it seems to me that, whether it was the Royal Society or some group like that was actually, what they're actually doing was interpreting these texts and then starting to implement it and work out how it was done. So they're just it's not their own work. They're just interpreting the text. Ripping it off and then presenting what we now have as science. And then at some point they started manipulating the actual narrative and taking certain. Basically, they took the spirituality or the connection that we have to Earth out of the sciences.
In some ways, not at the time of Newton, right? Because Newton he just writes about God and God this and God that. So he was an alchemist, and they tried to hide that side of him, right? They really tried to cut that off. And I don't know exactly the whole materialism, how they play that card, because people seem to be naturally not inclined to think that way. It's really bizarre, that the materialism in general. But this is one of the big. But of course, that's totally embedded in this triumphant sort of science tells all kind of Neil deGrasse Tyson narrative, right? That's the materialist science narrative. And for me, what was exciting was that if the ancients were correct about their cosmology and where we are, actually they were actually factually correct very much. It can toss out the whole of colonial science, and you need a paradigm shift then, because then it is exciting to try to figure out, because that was for me one of the crucial questions is, how do you get the whole of astronomy as a field to fall in this hole, right? How do you construct this structure that traps all of it? It's fascinating. How do you actually do? Because you have to account for you, me, or anybody, anyone we know to be excited about stars. And I remember as a kid that I look at these kind of cosmological little books. I think it was even Cosmos with some images and whatnot, wondering about the cosmos. Right? If you're excited about this, your culture, you go to school. Right? What other option do you have but to go into astronomy? Right? You go into astronomy, and then they present you with all this stuff, and they give you some machines to look, and they give you lots of assumptions. The one that's pretty amazing for me is the microwave radiation background. What the heck is? They just made it up. They made it up. It's incredible. It's just made up. There's no.
Oh, that's what we were talking about.
Argument. There's nothing. There's nobody saying, "Oh, I think is this," or "I think is this." Let's test what it is. Is this it? No, it's just, that is the background from Big Bang. That's it. They just declare it. It's the weirdest story. And when you start trying to look at these stories when they first start coming out, you're like, something is odd here. Somebody's controlling this kind of information. Somebody's darkening. Is hiding this stuff. That's definitely, obviously we know this is going on, but you can see in some of these stories, they're so poorly told. They have so many issues. It's like the other story of how they actually measured star distances without parallax or anything. How can they not have parallax to the 1980s, 1990s, where they claim that they collected it? It's totally, it doesn't fit the rest of none of it. And I don't know what happens. I think we get deprived of a kind of spatial imagination or something like this.
I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. It's like imagination is the infinite frontier. And it's how imperialistic is it just to come and mark your flag and say, all right, your imagination is mine. Now all these things that you're left to wonder about and search for, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is in such a way that you're not even allowed to question it. Have fun. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you become kind of impaired on what you're understanding what's around you, which is bizarre. These kind of lessons about perspective that we learn and other things that prove that we're definitely not on the ball, right? They're interesting, but one of the recently, and I think, I'm not sure you guys see it on Globebusters, I talked about it a few times. We're just looking at images of sprites. I showed this to Lucas. I think he was the first people I showed it. We are looking at sprites, and I was like, and Louisa, my wife's like, hey, look, the star is not even moving. I was like, huh? Wait. And she was like, she just made the point, and she didn't think about the significance. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. I mean,
I love those throwaway moments that become the big moment. I love that.
I was like, hey, look, this is huge. I mean, how is it that this star is not even flinching with it? No. Wait a second. The sprite is a massive, dozens of kilometers big discharge, which is very, very bright. It's on top of storms. The stars are supposed to be millions of, whatever light years away. How can they just not be affected? I mean, it was not even some stars. The sprite was there, and the stars are not affected at all. I mean, to the pixel. And for me, that's just like, it's just mind blowing. But it proves something, right? It has to prove that the stars somehow in front of the sprites, which is makes the stars maybe some sort of are they almost like being projected as well? It's just kind of like the sun and the moon might be in terms of because of the whatever the firmament, whatever material it is, or whatever the materials are, what they do to the stars.
Yeah, well, that's what I had thought about the stars. Definitely, that there is sort of a projection or like intersections of frequencies or nodal points, basically. But that sort of goes along that line for sure.
Well, and you see also that the sprites, they seem to charge some stars or something. That's what I thought. They seem to kind of there's some. Yeah, I don't know.
Do they brighten them up?
Some, not the ones that are in front of it.
Yeah, so they'd be in the area, and that would sort of make sense too.
I don't know what the heck, and we are totally, it's fascinating because I never expected to find that the Earth was not a ball.
If you have those pictures handy, we can share them. We just have to give you some power there.
I believe he has power.
Does he have the power? Right there at the bottom, it should be a green tab at the bottom of the screen. Just share screen there, and you choose whatever way you want to share it, with, without sound. It's up to you completely. And then once you have it there, if you tab the top of your screen, there'll be some annotation.
Let me see.
Little places you can play around with.
Get the right one. Yeah, this is the one that
kind of stuff. Because I'd love to see it. I've really been interested in sprites, of course, since figuring out,
Oh yeah,
might be a firmament there. But it was already something I was into. I always was into lightning.
Right. Yeah, that's I was just looking at work of people who are doing exactly that, looking at lightning storms. I was just looking at that, and I came across this guy who's filming these sprites from 480 kilometers away, and they're still in the horizon. They make this very flat light under them when the storms are. So he's filming them from Texas, and they're all the way in Florida. And that's why he gets the sprites, because they are 100 kilometers high.
Wow, that's awesome.
Wow.
Let me see.
I wonder where in Texas he's located.
So I know you're digging around for your stuff. I'm going to throw this out there so I don't forget later on. I'm real curious to hear, Rodrigo, what you think it is about that 2014-2015 timeframe that allowed YouTube to suggest so many flat Earth videos to people and have it just spread the way it did. I'd be real curious to hear your thoughts on that, but I want to see these sprite pictures first.
Do you see it here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this guy,
wow.
So this is kind of like, it's funny that he's giving you these flat kind of perspective lines.
Like perspective grids, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Give you a sense of the height of the sprites and how they're coming down. I guess they have to be over 50 kilometers large, their size. Now, I think, the ones that flash in the distance here, I think they're farther away, actually. So that's why they're down lower in the horizon.
Right. Perspective, of course.
Perspective. And here they show you, this is what I was talking about, 483 kilometers here.
That's nuts.
So this is where they were. And the storm system was all over the East Coast. So it shows lots of these. I'm going to look at the zoom here. So just pay attention to these stars. See these stars here? And I'm going to go kind of frame by frame when the sprite comes in. The big one there. Now look at the stars and the sprites coming in.
Wow.
And out.
What?
And
They literally
That
don't
doesn't
change.
affect them at all.
this is when they come in. Of course, in order.
And you can see other stars right next to them that definitely get blocked out by it.
Some do. Yeah, I think some are in the, like these ones, I think they're further away in the firmament or something. So they get covered.
Yeah, the 3 right in the center of the frame as well, that are by that one at the center of the frame that doesn't
here.
get blocked out. Those 3 stars, yeah, up a little bit too. The 3 stars right behind that bright one, down to the right a little
Here?
bit. Yeah, those 3 behind that bright star, those 3 get all blocked out, but that bright one right next to it
Stays. That's right.
stays. That is weird.
That's right.
Wow.
Very strange.
What the hell?
This one in particular, it's almost like it doesn't even, the pixels don't even change.
And I was noticing it doesn't even dim, but some to the left over here actually do dim as it happens. Hang on, let me grab my.
Yeah. And also what you see, which is very, very strange.
If you look over here while it's happening, oops, what did I do?
You see this here?
Okay. Yeah.
It's almost like fading in and out, this area. And when the big one strikes, oh wait. No, it just continues to fade. I thought it, I was just showing there's like some points that seem to be suddenly appear. Right, and I don't know what that means.
Have you gone through and chopped this up and pulled out the stars before, during, and after and just lined up minus the
I was
sprites?
thinking that too, to see if some fucking stars don't appear.
What do you mean?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, just take the video and cut out all the sprite frames. So all you have are the stars before the sprites, during the sprites, and then after the sprites.
After the sprite.
And then just
help me
compare
line up and see what might be there and what might not be there. Because there's some crazy shit happening on these outer edges when these things are going. Like stars are literally appearing and disappearing.
Yeah. That seemed to be, that's something I noticed.
And at first I attributed it to like ISO or to the, something like that.
Right.
But then there's that one right in the middle of all the brightest part of the sprite and it's not being affected at all. And that doesn't make any fucking sense in photography. So I don't get it.
No, that's what I thought. How could this make any sense? In particular, these,
especially when it makes those bright spots, right, that are equally as bright as the stars. It's just, I don't get it. Fuck. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it looks like the sprite's actually, I don't know if it's just a function of the sprite, how it's got that dotted effect down the bottom of it, but it, is it enhancing some other stars behind it? Or,
yeah, it's what it seems like.
But,
what is really strange, what the problem here, of course, is that the frame rate is not fast enough to capture the sprite flowing. So we're getting, I think we're missing a lot of the fact that it's streaking
the start and the finish of the sprite itself.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more. There's some videos of sprites that show in higher speeds what's going on, and it looks like water popping out.
Watching some of those newer slow motion videos of lightning is pretty insane. The way it just flows together from different places all at once.
Yeah, lightning as well. Sprites.
Well, there is a very high correspondence between sort of how they describe water and how it flows and electricity itself. So
yes, that's how they study how to make microchips. I had some friends in engineering physics who are doing that, and they told me that they teach you to control electricity just like water. The same.
Yeah, so like a little diode is basically like a little tap. That's Here
they have. Look at how it seems to be flowing off the firmament. Look at this.
Yeah.
Wow.
It looks like water on.
And it stays. It kind of stays there. Whoa.
So how high up would that be?
Around 100 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
And now here, I don't know if these would be stars or what it is. Like in this image, you don't really get to appreciate that.
And there are, 180 something lightning strikes per second on Earth?
Wow.
So these things could be happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're fairly new. I mean, they haven't been really studied very well. It's kind of like when you look at selenelium, for instance, another big problem for the ball, right? You don't find any astronomy books talking about it. They basically don't talk about it. You know?
Well, yeah, it's like stellar aberration. It goes down as a 0 in NASA's books, and then they mark the real thing, the negative, over to the right in the column, and they just don't teach it. They don't talk about it. It was discovered hundreds of years ago, and they just decide, oh, nope, it keeps going. The stars precess. They don't reset every 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. We're just going to ignore that.
Look, here it happens again. Look at that.
Wow.
The star's still in front of it. Yeah. Wow, this is insane.
Yeah, they are definitely interesting. Just because they don't move relative to each other, and yet the whole thing shifts. So it's almost like they're both stationary or stuck in a point, and then the whole thing shifts at once. So
look at this here. It looks like it's coming off a kind of ceiling.
Wow.
Look at that. Streaking down. And with a definite down direction.
Images from the ancient Egyptian cosmology with the stars hanging from the strings.
Mm-hmm. Look at this. And these are the ones that we're looking at. But you're getting... Oh. These big ones are... Whoa, look at... What?
So
wow.
This is 4K footage at 30 frames a second?
I don't know. Let's see this one frame. I don't know exactly. I think he talks a little bit more about what exactly he is.
Let's see. I've got it pulled up here. I can take a look.
Here it is. And now you see, like you're saying, Lucas, there seems to be some things that are lit up. It's almost like stars are lit up. Why would it have these points popping in?
I mean, that must be a huge amount of electricity there. I mean, that's probably putting, like a little lightning storm to shame, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And look at these stars don't flinch on top here.
No, and it doesn't even look like they get brighter at all.
Yeah, like nothing happens to them. It's just kind of impossible.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing. It's impossible.
How is that possible with normal, that's not how photography works. It should wash it out. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you see it over and over again, so it's something. Stars have to be in front of it. I mean, I don't see an alternative. This for me looks
that was how big it was, 50 kilometers by 50 kilometers. That's huge.
Holy smokes.
There's some serious power there.
That is some serious power.
50 kilometers of electricity striking down. And so on top of it, it's connected to the storm. There has to be a storm under it, right? That's how it works.
That's at least, 3 million volts per meter?
Right? If that's going on as often as it is, and lightning is hitting as often as it is, and yet it's all somehow still synced up in the right way for this machine that we live in to still work like it does, what does happen when something goes out of sync and things start going awry and a diode fails here, or a city grid goes down there, or a church capacitor goes offline here, suddenly we have a reset.
Well, aren't there groups of people that were supposedly around before the moon? And there's stories of the moon coming in and it creating all kinds of havoc as it started appearing in the sky.
Well, there is this sort of idea that, there's as planets form and things, one thing shifts to another. So the sun that was, could have been originally something else, and then it sort of migrates over to the new sun in a sense. It's like a progression of, probably not explaining that very well, but yeah, it's the sun that was, say it was, the moon was the sun originally, and then the sun. So there's these sort of ideas. I don't know how much truth there is to them, but like a progression of which planet becomes the sun in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories.
You're treading all over that Martin Kinney area you don't like.
Now, being in anthropology,
I'm just saying, it's right there.
Being in anthropology in college, did they ever teach you about Tartaria? Was that ever mentioned? As one of the cultures, one of the ancient cultures that was quite large? Because I know that we have all kinds of different empires throughout the ages that,
I think that if you look into the history, if you go after specifically the area, Macedonia and Russia and so on, you can help but run over it, because I ran across some travelers' tales from that going through the edges of Tartaria in the Eastern Poland in the, what I read it on my stream, 1700s, is the guy who got tortured by the Inquisition as well. But he says some really strange things about Tartaria. He says that they killed their own parents and they eat their children and some other really weird stuff, and that they have a dictator that it's like God on earth, and kind of odd story. But there's things like this. But I look into, the farther east that I went, I never, this is the thing, I never specialized in one of those, the mythologies of an area. I'm pretty sure people who are into looking into those areas will come across all sorts of stuff. And I'm sure anthropologists are looking into what is called Tartaria, which is kind of like it's a minefield of its own. Like I've run across some stuff that I thought, this is not serious. I mean, this is not serious, but there people are really into it. And I think it's a kind of phenomenon that I yet don't understand. What is it that people, because there's a big issue. For instance, I looked into the World Fair stuff, and I was really impressed. I was like, how the hell did they do this? And this stuff must have been there, and la 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 la. And I went through it with UAP and Stellium 7 and so on. And then Stellium 7 recently comes to me and says, man, we just found the archives with all the construction of the World's Fairs, every detail of the whole thing being constructed. And like, I don't know what to do. He's like, I don't know what to think now. And I was like, well, you're wrong. And, maybe they did it. Maybe they did it.
Move on.
So, yeah, just move on. And I don't know. I think there's been, obviously, through, you don't have to be even so, look too hard to find out that there's been huge cataclysms on the earth from time to time. And the ancient cultures all talk about floods and things like this. So something definitely going on, and more than that, right? So, but when it comes to, and star forts are a very interesting kind of phenomenon. There's things that are buried here where I am, but there's also things that are not buried. And there's like cave systems where I am, which is really strange. There are cave systems that look like they'd be built by Egyptians. I mean, I can't even. And it's mainstream. People go there to do their little trip inside there's no end to it. Nobody knows the end of the tunnels. But you're not talking about. They say it's something that's scalpeled with a chiseled out of the stone. When you look at it, it's
right.
like 20 meters. I don't know. It's like 20 meters high. Like some ridiculous. The kind of the scale of the thing. I can try to show you. It's just totally ridiculous.
Little overkill for humans
Like,
to need
okay,
to walk through.
they say that it's chiseled.
They wanted to have a nice reverb for their chanting through the tunnels, man. Come on.
No, there's and here there's, yeah, it's bizarre, man. And I actually talked, and this is one thing that's funny. My wife has one of her best friends from high school who studied the history of ancient history, museum stuff, and she worked in a museum and whatever. And I did a postdoc in Leiden University with people who are working in the archaeology museum and the ancient historians and Egyptologists and whatnot. And we all know that museum only shows you a very small percentage of what they have in storage. They have 90% of what they have is in storage or more. And I was asking her, do you think it's easy to hide history or change history? And she's like, it's just elementary. She's like that. It's like it's so easy to keep things from people and to control the narrative of what is known of what is not known and what artifacts you get to see or not to see. But just take a look at this place. Look at
that's it, isn't it? They just put on the stuff that suits the narrative. They show that stuff and then they hide away the other stuff. So yeah, it seems fairly easy to do that.
You think this is like chiseled? Some of this stuff. Later, you got people started drawing on it and whatnot, right?
So imagine a great reset, and people have to get underground and trapped down there for who knows how many generations.
No, they chiseled this out with chisels. Okay, for the size of the chambers.
And weren't they bronze chisels at that?
Look at that.
Yeah, that works real well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's unreal, isn't it?
This is the Star Fort that's here on top of a hill. But there's another one which is partly buried in town.
Yeah, I visited a Star Fort right on the Mississippi River.
Right.
And they don't say it's a Star Fort, and it's all underground. There's just like one side of the Mississippi River is about, 200 feet higher than the other side at this place. And right at the top of these mounds, there's 4 big mounds. And you can tell that this was like the top of the Star Fort at one time.
Where was this?
And you go up to the top. This was right by not far from St. Louis, but further south, heading into the National Forest there, the Mark Twain National Forest.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was right on the Mississippi River. There was a bend, and they had an earthquake right there that sunk an island that used to have a town on it. It was one of the spots where the Mississippi was real wide, and there was a big, little island out in the middle of it. Hmm. And yeah, there was a big story about how an earthquake came and destroyed the island and sunk half of it down into the Mississippi River and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, it doesn't mention any, and they say it used to be a fort, but there's no mention of it being a Star Fort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That there is some serious construction. I mean, those stones alone are just huge.
Yeah, they say this got chiseled. They don't know the end of this tunnel, though. They don't know the end of this. And this is where I am, here in the south of the Netherlands. Right?
And the Egyptians built these?
No.
They say?
No, it looks Egyptian.
I just said.
He's very correct on that. It definitely has an Egyptian feel, especially with that. Those stones and those long halls. Look at that.
Well, didn't they just find some big cave system that went from northern Scotland all the way into France?
Yeah.
Oof, I don't know. It's possible.
Whoa.
They have some sort of this is
The lizard people are real.
No, this is just people coming in and
Yeah, you can tell
but
somebody
maybe
did
the
that
stone
recently.
is soft. I don't know. But still, I mean, this is just totally insane.
Even if it's soft and with all that stuff, it's the
If it's soft,
what
how's
gets
still
it is
there?
the amount of manpower it actually take to do it the way that they say is just phenomenal. Like,
why the excess? I mean, if you're doing it, if you're chiseling that out, why would you go through the trouble of chiseling all of that out?
And if you look at these 19th centuries kind of mining tunnels or something like this, you're going to see how shitty it is in contrast. Like
the mining shafts they have. Jeez, those places are death traps going into the old abandoned mine.
So it's not the same.
They were death traps when they were brand new. Right. A lot of those mines.
Exactly.
You know, it's nothing like this.
Look at that. What was it? What was here? This not the same.
No, it's a little different level of craftsmanship there.
So I don't know. They would be, if the people who would really look at that. Same kind of deal, right? I don't know. People who would be, and let me stop sharing here. People who would be looking into who keep this history. I mean, something obviously. We are totally in the dark. I mean, we come up and we have the educational system. We're screwed. We have the world, that set you up.
The winners write the histories. Period.
Yeah, that's the other problem. I think it's the way it is like the history is what you make of it. I think this is my point. Is like it's got a lot to do with where you looked. I mean, I know some people who. This is one of the issues I had. People that they're saying Pompeii was not a ancient city. It was something that that Vesuvius, the mountain, erupted in 1700s, because it did erupt in 1700s as well. But they say that that's the one that covered Pompeii, and then they have all kinds of other, which is absolute total bullshit. And I've been there 3 times. It's totally ridiculous. And if you study Latin and Greek culture, which is something I wanted to study because I wanted to look at these ancient stories and how they were. It's before I got into it, I had no idea of how complicated and rich the information that I would find would be, and how it can possibly be completely invented. Like some people suggested that the ancient Roman and Greek literature was invented in the 17th century, when people cannot even write good Latin. How are they going to invent better works? It's impossible. And it's very hard to explain, because if you don't have the experience with the language and you don't understand the difference between, if I say, what's the difference between St. Augustine's Latin and Ovid's Latin? Can you tell me the difference? Or the difference between Cicero and St. Augustine and Ovid and Lucretius and Catullus? What's the difference? And if you don't appreciate the difference, it'd be difficult to appreciate the difference. You have to have read all this stuff in the Latin. So I understand it's very complicated, but once you see it for what it is, you're like, okay, there's, and you compare to Kepler's Latin or Descartes' Latin in the 1700s, these guys, or even Emanuel Swedenborg, which is a very interesting character. I read his Latin from his period, 1700s as well. He's like this guy who went into these other planes and talked to angels and whatever, like really strange stuff, Protestant. But it's kind of the first medium or whatnot. His Latin, it's not even close. Like it's the style is completely different. I can tell just like that. I look at it, I know if it's. It cannot be, if it's from which period of Roman history, even you can tell by the way they choose to write.
Are you sort of saying that when you go further back, it actually gets more complicated? It gets more it's better written, things like that. Because
some of it's like you can see, you hear if you study even. Even the book that I'm using to teach Latin in Mondays. They talk a little bit about this, and they cover some of the history of 17th century, 16th century, and they started rediscovering some of these Latin texts the model became kind of Cicero. People wanted to try to write like Cicero. They couldn't, but they kind of appreciated the style because it's very striking. Once you read it, like his Catilinum, in Catilinum, his the Catilinarian conspiracy. That text, that speech that he gives, it's so powerful. Once you read it in Latin, you're like, wow! Like it's like this guy's.
Is it kind of like Old English, Middle English, and Modern English? It's all English, but written differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to think like this. Like when I talk, what you see there is that the natural for the Romans at that time, the Cicero is from the time of Jesus, so it's like immediately at the generation of Jesus. So he's pretty much contemporary, and he at that time, Rome already had 700 years of history and developing their own language. So, and they had become, in say 300 years before that, there was a huge they discovered Greek culture, and they got completely involved with Greek culture. They loved they want to know more, and they people started going to Athens to study. So the Romans at the Cicero's period, they were fluent in Greek and Latin, and they read all the Plato, everything, Aristotle, Plato, all that stuff was already hundreds of years old. It was 400 years old at the time of Cicero. So he had read it all, and he had considered all that stuff, all the other philosophers, and he essentially he's so meticulous when he's going to be critical of somebody else. They got these rules against strawmanning others. They really want to, if you want to is the academic ethos actually comes up at that time. They call themselves the academicians, I guess. This is academic school. There's all these schools of thought in antiquity, in Hellenistic philosophy. And he and others, they had this position, which is the learned position we copy now. There's a lot of things that we try to copy from these guys. But the difference is that they have this long history of being open to differences from other cultures that they realize are good for them. They want to learn from other cultures. They don't want to. They're not ethnocentric. They don't want to. This is one of the things that is one of the greatest virtues of the Romans. Had horrible things about them as well. They were imperialists. They invented the government, but they had lots of critical thinkers. And amongst the philosophers, and you see that in the culture, that they were not out to destroy other religions and destroy other cultures. They wanted money, they wanted wealth, they wanted control, but they also knew how to incorporate the things that would give them advantage or learn from other things, and not completely dismiss just because it's something different.
Well, you do see a lot of that in the sort of these higher thoughts, that they want to integrate other ideas, and they think it's good to go and share knowledge and increase their own knowledge by looking at other people's cultures and things like that. So there's that really openness to them, definitely.
You see this, for instance, in the time of Plato. There's the dialogue of Protagoras, right? Protagoras comes up and he says, the man is the measure of all things, right? Which is a very interesting point, that we invent the measurements, right? We are the measure of all things, and so on. But this guy who comes up in this dialogue and impresses Socrates, and Socrates doesn't even actually question this guy so much. He kind of learns from him. But he's someone who's a traveling. He became a sophist, they call it, or somebody who knows about, which that takes a bad name later, but someone who tries to learn wisdom, tries to find out wisdom. And the idea, the model there is that you do it by traveling into many different places and try to learn from different cultures. A person was not considered learned, or a peritus. This is in Latin. We use this word perito in Portuguese to mean an expert, and both words, peritus and expertus in Latin, mean someone who has traveled far away. Per means thoroughly. Itus is having gone, is the verb to go. Eo ire, itus, I have gone. Peritus, expert is somebody who has gone thoroughly through a track. The other one, expertus, is essentially the same. Somebody who's been outside moving expedior. It's a kind of movement. So it's about traveling. It's about not staying in place. So, and you see this actually, some of the cultures are the richest cultures of all time in terms of their knowledge of the environment and their ability to trade and their ability to are nomadic peoples from the Saharas, and who were able to cross from Mauritania all the way to China and India, back and forth for generations, looking at the sky and learning about the stars and learning how to navigate by the stars, and being experts in all these environments, going from the desert all the way east. Like you get these caravans like Marco Polo later on, but that is the way that people spread and culture spreads, I think, has a lot to do with these trade lines. And that's why I am very skeptical. And I think that the real picture is very complicated when you look at languages and how languages, there's this whole idea that there is this Proto-Indo-European language and that connects all these other languages, but that doesn't exist. This language, you don't know. It's kind of assumed. And I think that there's so much trading going on, so much mixtures, and then movements to try to purify a language, to try to codify it, that we can possibly trace how every language is this idea that we can specify, which is this obsession that a lot of people have. They want to know the origin of something or the date of something, or it's almost like all that matters. Like you see that a lot in archaeology.
So you're saying sort of like language is more liquid in its sense. It just moves and changes from place to place. So it doesn't really have a origin as such. Just cultures that have their differences start creating differences in language.
That too, and then how things spread. I mean, you see that some things obviously you can trace some things. You see the Roman influence is huge, and then the way that people pick up their language is pretty obvious sometimes, like in things like, for example, winemaking. All the barbarian peoples, the Belgae or the Belgians and the Dutch here and the Germans, all these guys, they take their languages come straight from the Romans. That the Romans had the techniques from winemaking, and they just learned those techniques, and they just changed the word a little bit. But it really depends on, if you look at stories from that have been reported from shamanic experiences, you have these shamanic languages, and you have the idea that there's, in some Melanesian cultures, the cosmology is this holographic cosmology, that there's a source somewhere else as well. This idea that we're differentiated here, but we all come from the same source, but that in that source there may be all these other, there may be a culture in there too. There may be some source of language there too. You see,
well, that's getting back to a lot of these ideas where they have this underneath reality, this pattern, that's that sort of father figure, or the idea of pattern underneath, that actually where is potential energy that is the creator of all changes in a sense, but doesn't change itself. So that seems to be that singular unity behind things. And that's where you get into a lot of the Buddhism sort of stuff, even when you're going into the Hinduism and things like that. And even the Christian religion has that as well, where you're getting to behind getting behind reality, going up into those nirvana states where you're getting back to the unity, the source, where you're above polarity. So
duality,
I think
they talk about duality a lot. Yeah, the shaman goes into the world beyond duality, where the transcendent. That is it. The tree of life in the center of the earth is the navel of the earth. That is the point of transcendence that they talk about. Like the way they go into the world of non-duality is through this navel of the earth, which is the North Pole.
Of course,
that's right.
That's direct us away from the North Pole so much with Antarctica.
And that's a lot of the symbolism comes out of that sort of idea of the center of our plane, which is, you can see the circle with the dot in it that's representing the monad, and that's the unity idea. Even when you're looking at, say, the compass, how you have to put the point in first and then draw the circle, the same sort of idea of going to that monad, that one singular source. So there's a correspondence between the center of our world and that unity idea.
Well, I'm reading a book right now for some while now. It's The Secret History of the World. This guy has done a lot of secret school studies and kind of coalesced them all into one place, and it definitely talks about this history of this evolution from the one source, the one mind, the one thought, and this thought condensing into these different forms. And like as condensation density kept creeping in, matter solidified, we were not always, the same form. It's a neat book. I'll send you a link to it. Jonathan Black, I believe his name is. But yeah, it definitely talks about the same idea of this origin, this source point. And when we talked about the birds earlier, the murmuration, that's also one of those things, I think, that reflects that oneness, that unity, that overall.
Yeah, birds seem to have the understanding of where north is, right? They really know.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can feel it. They know where it is. They know where the sun is at all times, I think, as well. I think they might even follow the sun sometimes, It's it's bizarre. We need to. It would be amazing to understand how geese do what they do and where they go and when they go north, because who knows where they actually go? There's no boundaries for geese. You know what I'm saying? If there's land in the north which is accessible, these guys are not bound to.
Well, that's right, and these like the birds and things that are migrate, they basically have to know the changes in the sun because that's changing the weather and where these sort of jet streams and things are actually flowing. So they'd have to know that what the sun's doing, where the magnetics are, and when to actually leave to catch a ride, in a sense.
So I got to thinking about those murmurations and then Canadian geese. You ever see just a single Canadian goose flying by itself?
No. We thought once we were in Vancouver, we were looking north and we thought, oh, it's a UFO. And then we started looking. It's like, no, these are geese.
You find them. You'll find them on occasion. Usually you hear them by first themselves because they're honking and they're usually low flying, and you can tell and maybe this is, again, just me anthropomorphizing these Canadian geese, but there's almost a panic to their honking because by themselves, they don't really know where to go.
Interesting.
They only get north. They only go north and south as a group, as those flying V formations. By themselves, a Canadian goose gets lost. If he can't find that flock, he's not making it north. That's why he's panicked. That's why he's honking and flying. And again, maybe it's me, but I've seen it a couple times, and I can almost hear the panic and the honking. It's nutty.
In Oregon, where I was there with my brother often, they are in a pathway of exactly that. And many times I've actually seen the formation go along, and one of them will get out of the formation, and that panic will set in. That you're talking about, that honking and like, where the shit do I go? Oh God, where they at? Oh, okay, there they are. And he gets back, or one will actually get out of the line and go help him back into the line and shit like that. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. They are definitely got to do that V or it doesn't work out.
They change formation. They change who's at the point of the V. It's not always the same goose. The sides are never the same length. Well, not always, but usually they're not the same length. Yeah, it's like the sum of the parts is more than the whole, because alone they can't figure it out, but together they know exactly what to do, where to go, and how to get there. Sometimes they might fall out, but yeah, it's really crazy.
Well, there is,
Yeah.
even when the birds sort of in groups do those swirling and things like that, I mean, they're operating as sort of one entity at that stage, aren't they? Even if they're sort of registering from each other, but they seem to turn so quick and do all their sort of, it seems a bit all over the place, but there is you can see it's almost like flowing of water or whatever it is. So
It's
yeah,
amazing. It's almost like they're speaking.
Mm.
For me, it's like they're making some sort of, I don't know.
Now, has that come up at all in your studies, the language of the birds or the green language?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is fairly new, but indigenous peoples everywhere, you don't find some that don't speak to animals, that don't consider animals to be persons. Very hard to come across. I mean, well, I guess you can, but animals and plants are considered to be beings by many people. So they're already in contact with them. There's even people who think that berries are listening and that berries have spirits that you can talk to the berries. So you can talk to glaciers. You can talk to rocks, and these things are alive. That's been known for a long time. I mean, those. But one thing I was going to mention that I thought it was spectacular when I saw it by chance is that we were in the lake, and here they have these huge swans. Right, swans is huge. Like if you guys see a swan up close, like a wild swan, it's scary. Like it's very big. And I saw it taking off on the lake, and I was like, whoa. It was really amazing. I don't know if you've ever seen a swan taking off. I just thought I would throw it in there. We were amazed because she needs to take a run towards the water. The way the one we saw did it is that he opened his huge wings and I guess dried them off a little bit, and then he lined up and took a run into the kind of top of the lake and then flapped up. But it was like, it's huge. It's huge. And I never seen, because there's plenty of geese here. There's lots of geese here. But and there's also swallows that come seasonally. They just arrived. But the swans flying was like, holy shit, man. And sometimes I see them flying. They fly in 2 or 3. It's wild.
The idea that how you were saying that there's consciousness or everything has these guys saw that the plants were living beings and all the rest of it, that goes back to that sort of unity idea that you're sort of everything around you is conscious in some way and that you can communicate with it. And this sort of idea seems to have followed through some of the alchemy sort of lines of their type of science, where they're actually still had in the back of their minds that everything was, there's a reflection of them within the work they're doing, as well as this idea that the elements themselves come from a unity. But they've sort of taken that out in modern science and said, well, no, this is one element here, one element there, and they don't sort of correspond, or there's nothing connecting them. There's no transmutation of elements. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Interesting. I have Cami here. She just joined us. I was going to ask you as well, Lucas. Someone asked me to ask if you can tell the difference between Victorians and Queenslanders by how they talk.
I don't know. Well, I think there's just a few sort of like little things, why they pronounce a few words. It wouldn't be that.
So it's not that easy.
No, it wouldn't be that easy, but there's definitely people from different areas say a few words differently, or they have a different inflection in their voice or something like that, but no, not really that different.
That's another thing that we have naturally that we grow up with, and we kind of tend to forget that how sensitive we are to sound and details in gesture and how we don't learn about paying attention to those things so much. Some people have more of a knack for it. For me, one thing that make a big difference is this book. Different things. I always be interested in listening. But there's a book by Herman Hesse called The Glass Bead Game, and that got me really attuned to those questions of detail, of resonance, of being, and of words, and of sounds, and of music, and so on. Don't know why I said that. I think Cammy's here. Let's see what she has to say.
Cammy was bad. I am just jumping in, getting the equipment set up, and just now listening to what you're talking about. So I have to listen a little bit further. I was out playing with the rocks. They were calling out, "Come pick me," and Jana was over here, and I was bad. So I apologize, and I can't even jump in with that because I just was figuring out how to get all of the pieces working and how to turn my camera off.
I'm being very interested in how the ancients talk about gemstones, and I think Lucas has been looking at that as well. You showed us that video when they talk about the gems in the Bible having a particular characteristics that other gems don't have. That they all go through all the rainbow colors, I guess. And I know that in the Mahabharata, the gems are a big deal. And they're described in many parts. So I'm trying to pay attention now when they come along. But I know that when Arjuna goes to conquer the north, the far north, he goes all the way to the far north, and then he gets into these guardians at the door, and they say, "You cannot come here because you're alive. No live person can go through these doors." And they say, "Go back to where you came from, but take these gems," and gives him some special gems. And he says, "Oh, all right, I'll do it," because he was not supposed to be persuaded easily to turn back. He's supposed to conquer the whole world. But it's very interesting how he just immediately turns back. He realizes that the north is not just for anybody, anytime. And it's like, all right. And then he takes some special gems from the north. So who knows?
Yeah, there's so much we can learn from looking at the language. And the other one that's really interests me is this idea of number and how they're actually using number in these texts, and what actually certain numbers would represent, or where they actually fit in, because there's just seems to be a reoccurring bunch of numbers. Like, you have 3, which is obviously the Trinity idea. And then 7 is another one that's huge, and anything to do with these double numbers like 1111 or 22, 44, 88, all those sort of numbers as well. Yeah, then you got your 12s, and each of them seem to have a bunch of things corresponding to them. It's almost like they're just there's a bunch of knowledge related to each number. Probably not. I'm still sort of grasping at where they're actually sort of trying to point to, or what these things represent, as in sort of schematics. But there's definitely something, much bigger that we don't understand there. That's for sure.
Yeah, I have some things to share about that, but keep going, because I'm going to take a restroom break really quick. I'll be back in 20 seconds.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about star forts since hearing Zach talk earlier. And the brick formations, and this fascination with red bricks and red clay and antiquitech. And just this weird presence of all these crystals inside this big deposit of red clay. There where Zach is. And again, I don't know, nothing specific, just something been murmurating around in my brain.
And Lucas, I think while thinking about that, you're probably thinking about the same thing as I am, that the red clay is a denotation. The red is iron, Fe. We are iron core, iron realm, iron. we are it. I mean, this is what we're talking about. So it conducts electricity. It is ferromagnetic. It has all of these different properties to it. And I don't think it's an accident that we landed in this property full of the red clay and full of the crystals. And that's why I couldn't come to the show today, was for that. I can try to make up for you. I can, let's see if host disabled participant screen sharing. I was going to show you anisotropic, what you were
You shall
talking
have
about.
some power soon.
Are you going to give me power?
No. No power for you, woman. Who do you think you are? Power? This is a man's world.
I have John
you should
over
be
at the
good.
house right now. It's one of my friends here down here, and she's fabulous. And one of the things we're going to be doing together, she's going to be photographing like what I'm doing here with Scotch tape and glass. You can also do with mica and all the different gemstones. We're going to be putting together little clips on showing on exactly how all this stuff works. But on the screen, what we're going to show you is, let's see.
You have power.
Yeah. So do you have me sharing now?
I see some tape.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. We got
Yep.
tape.
And what you're looking at this screen right now is you're looking at a piece of glass that's from a picture frame. So you just popped out a picture frame, right? And Chris Van Mater did this. I wanted just to get tape orientated in different directions because tape, like a lot of gemstones, is anisotropic. And what that just simply means with optics is the it's not evenly. Think about drawing a plus sign and see how your optic axes are even, right? Now think about drawing a cross, like a Christian cross, and you move it up to the top. And now you have one axis that's longer than another. Does that give you so if you look through one direction, you would see maybe a different color than the other direction? And again, just different angles and different lights. I'm very, very much simplifying it. But what we're going to do is see and this is packing tape, the kind that you use on boxes that he cut in strips. Cellophane is anisotropic. A lot of wood, things that grow in directions, a lot of the times you'll have that going on in it. But it can have an optical thing. So if you cut it in a thin enough piece and look at it, this is what it looks like. When again, I'm going to put it between Polaroid filters, and nothing that I'm going to show you has any color in it. The color is all being pulled out just by what angle of light you're looking at, like what you do with a prism. Except for this is showing what solids do. Are you getting color changes? Yep.
So that's just a widescreen, and that's a polarized film, and tape. That's nuts.
Right. You could do this yourself at home by having a pair of polarized sunglasses and taking the sunglasses off and just looking through them as you were rotating and spinning them. The back screen of your computer, most computers you can check it, but the back screen of most computers, your monitor is horizontally polarized. It's the norms, and so this is just showing.
It's like the angles of light change the color.
Exactly. So the
angels.
The angles or the angels of light, the way it comes in, you're going to see how by just changing the direction of light, you're looking at it through, by looking through literally small lines through there. So you're only seeing light coming in one direction, you're seeing the whole spectrum. And a lot of gemstones, when you do this to them, we'll be doing films of it. Mica especially, I was playing with this. Here, let's go find out where I am here. The worst driver ever.
I was gonna ask you guys, like, and I think it's a silly idea. I'm not sure I asked this before, but you're saying before that, of course, the telescope, the mirror is being magnified by the eyepiece, right? That's the only thing that's going on, right?
What are we talking about? Oh, on the telescope?
Yeah, because telescopes with and I'll get to where it makes sense with polarized filters, right? Because we're looking at telescopes and polarization happening through the telescope, also in the crazy sun, right? But the one question I wanted to ask, and it's a little bit off, but okay.
Go for it.
If the eyepiece is magnifying the mirror, what happens if you put a microscope in the mirror?
If the eyepiece is magnifying the mirror,
wouldn't it make sense to put a microscope then there to see even further?
Well, that's what a
That we see.
microscope is a microscope is no different than like the lenses. Your eyepiece is just a microscope. There's no difference.
Right. So right.
I mean, that's really how it's focused. Your lenses
same.
are just, it's the same. You're just looking big, macro instead of micro.
Mm-hmm. But would you see more if you had a microscope that was very powerful on that same?
No, because you're going to get into, who does a really, really good video on it. I don't know if he still has it up, his Curious Life. And you're going to still get up to that no matter what light, when you're looking at a distance and that light, and he took it down to the nanometers, you still have an amount that no matter how strong you get on the telescope, it will only resolve so far from where you are as the starting point, because the inverse square law on that, you'll get far enough out that the amount that you're able to resolve is narrower than with the bandwidth
you
of
can
light.
magnify that.
So you can't possibly magnify that. And again, he did it really, really good, and he took it with the math and the nanometers and that. And he did it in CAD engineering, where he took it out and said that at this many miles, no matter how good your optics get, you will still have the resolution that you can't resolve the bandwidth of light in nanometers anymore. So no matter what, you're not going to be able to see forever because of the fact that the resolution and the way that your eye from you. Karen was saying that she's not a geocentrist. She's what does it mean when it really revolves around you? She's a self-centralist that really, when you look optically at what she's correct. When you're looking at how you resolve everything, it has to do with your eyeball and your optics. Right. And so if you look at, you want to know what time the sun comes up, when it's at meridian, when it goes down, where every star is, you look at your planisphere, you look at whatever your apps are on your iPad, Stellarium, and do it. What do you have to do? You have to put in exactly where are you. Everything is completely user dependent on you being your optics working with what you're seeing out there. But again, you can't, if you don't sunrise and sunset it, you have to know where you are, where the stars are in the sky. It makes no difference on the position. If you want to know what angle they're at, it's all depending at where you are. It's where your eye is resolving them down, and it's a very mathematical formula.
So it's
been worked out for years.
For the telescope, the only way to get a better resolution then is a larger mirror. That's it.
You need a bigger aperture. The bigger aperture that you put on it, the more you can let in. But again, you're always going to be an inverse square law on that. You're going to be limited by the size of the aperture and where you can resolve the light down to.
Right, got it. So there's no need to have
it's a mathematical limitation. There's no reason to have a thing on it. It's a mathematical limitation that right now with the aperture sizes, we don't need to worry about putting a microscope on to get past it. Or
it's impossible.
That thing about us being the center of our own worlds and stuff is a sort of very old philosophical idea as well, where it comes into that paradox that we're both one and two, in a sense that we're part of the world and yet we're singular in the way we view it. So that makes a lot of sense to view it in that way as well. So that how we perceive the world is through our own eyes, and yet we're a part of it in a sense. So we're singular and yet dualistic in that sense.
Yeah, and when I'm curious to see where Cami was going with what she was going to show us with the gems and polarization. Before I jump into some different direction, or she's not here anymore.
She's probably run off and disappeared.
Hello.
There she got out of range. She's back.
Okay, no, I'm right here. I haven't even moved. It's going to cut off. I was going to tell everybody to look around as far as being the center of everything. Remember, space-time is not bendy. It is not, you can't throw a tennis ball and watch it gravitate in. None of this stuff works. There is no contracting and bending or anything on it. Where you are in space is where you are in time. If you look at your sky, it is a giant clock, and where you are underneath it is where you are in space. And where you are in space, the way that the sun, the moon, everything lines up, the planets against the sidereal sky. This lineup again only comes every 26,000 some years. It's a perfect cycle, and where you are in space is where you are in time. That is the weaving on it. Quit weaving it crazy. Be like a woman. Take fabric, space, and time. It's where you are. You're part of it, and where you are is where you're measuring around. So keep it easy. Keep it simple. Keep it fun.
Yeah.
Can I share some things before we?
Yes. Do it.
My friend that came over, Jana, I have to say some of the things she brought.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 1972. I looked it up.
Wow.
Original
Nice.
junior architect,
Wow.
Tinker Toys.
Whoa. Wow. Original.
The
It's-
original, yeah, it is the original, and this is the numbered where they're going to for boys and girls and talk about the exact numbered edition from Tinker when it was still Tinker Toy Questory or Questar.
Can you still get this kind of stuff?
It doesn't look like this anymore. It's now plastic. Where in this in real Tinker Toy world,
It's wood.
it's wood. It's wood.
Oh yeah.
And you have all the different sizes of the wood. This is well played with. We'll have to do it. Now, what I did get, I might have to share screen again. Let me show these things first. So I ordered for Sunday. They have giant Tinker Toys now that it's under the title of fort games that you can build little forts and throw blankets on them, but you can make geodesic shapes and the things that we're working with. You'll have to show this, or well, can you pull up Star Fort Games, FORT games, and see if you can find the kids' toy and share maybe. In the meantime,
start getting some of these things. Fort
things,
games.
yeah, things you'll also be jealous of. I have the Key to the Tarot from 1918, I believe. First edition, 1918. The illustrated Key to the Tarot, and it has books referencing like the 1500s and things like this in print. And this is all.
Can you still get that? Can you get that book online still, or is it?
I don't know. It's on loan to me right now. We'll have to look. I haven't looked it up, and you can even see if you want to look. It's called The Key to the Tarot, and it has the Ouroboros on the front. Doing this, and this one is marked as a first edition from 1918.
Wow.
So it's like, is it like kind of a frame building thing that you're talking about, Cami? It's like balls and rods kind of thing, and you connect them?
That's the closest thing I'm coming up with.
Yes,
You know,
it is.
balls
It is.
are,
It's like giant. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. They're giant Tinker Toys. Bring that up on the screen. This is so cool. Maybe it's just me that thinks it's cool, but I'm going to show you what I can do with it on the screens if you do, or I can bring it up on the screen too if you want me to.
Yeah, you can do it because you got the screen on, or don't you? Or
Well,
who's sharing?
Somebody's doing it. Okay, yeah, there you go. That was it. Whoever shared that was good for a minute.
This?
Go. Whoever is just yes. Well, that's somebody else. I didn't do the ultimate. I did the ones that were called Fort Builders. That has 120. Walt just had a nut because they had the geodesic shapes in that. Not this one, but another one.
Yeah, I see some other ones, but that's the idea, right?
Yeah, dude, you had the letter.
Finding another picture. Give me a.
Yeah, Zach. Somebody had it up exact.
Oh, I see one in Amazon that gives you the different shapes you can build.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I got it from. Was Amazon? It was called Game Forts.
Here, I'm gonna put in the chat. See if you can show it here. This one is made by SSSM or something. Oh no, this one is in. I don't know if it's in Dutch. 158 pieces creative fort building set. Kids construction tower buildings. Do yourself castles.
You can do. I can do the platonic solids and that in it. So this book, I'm holding that book on there, but
it's awesome.
with this, you can build out like the geodesic platonic solids and do that to do shapes and that to show when we're working with the kids to do the crystal things. And we can also work on like the grid nut that we did, like Zach did the Sephiroth and with the Play-Doh and toothpick. I'm hoping we can do this kind of more like hammy sized. Another
this is great. I'm gonna get these for sure because my boy's gonna love this stuff.
Fun stuff, not all that expensive. Another book that she brought over was a thick book called The Illustrated Signs and Symbols Source Book, an A to Z compendium of over 1,000 designs of signs. It's a signs and symbols source book. It's got everything from flora to tarot to all the sigils, Celtic. I'm holding this up, but I have a whole book of
design. Oh, the I Ching is there. I just saw the
everything is. I mean, wherever I open it up, it's entirely illustrated to every type of symbology. It's a complete A to Z source of it. So she came over bearing gifts. That's why I couldn't get on the show. She brought the gifts, and then we played rocks out in the forest. But that was my day.
That's great. Now you have a lot of stuff to study.
So I have a ton of stuff to study. I have a camera. I have the new camera and all the filters, and we have had chemtrailing. I don't know about everybody else. Our skies have been soup. I have not been able to see the sun anywhere close to it. It's supposed to be sunny. I mean, our weather was supposed to be sunny skies, and I have the camera and want to do some things and look around it, and it's complete pea soup. Has been since the camera arrived, even though it was forecast to be bright and sunny. Could be that I'm not up in the morning.
Chemtrailing here, but the other day in chat, other morning for us, so it was nighttime for, I think, was it Dawn? It may have been Dawn, it may have been Diva. But she was mentioning, we were talking about the moon and the crazy stuff we've been seeing with it through this last full moon cycle. And she mentioned how it was kind of cloudy for her, and it was shining through the clouds, and it was a real dark, brown, dirty looking light, and it must be the clouds. And I thought, interesting. Same thing here last night when I went out. Moon shining through the clouds, and it was a few layers. Like there was a layer that was just kind of slow and still in front of the moon, but then there were other layers blowing by really fast. Because, that makes sense. And it definitely was a brown, dirty, gross, dirty looking light shining through those clouds. So I'm just wondering why. Frequency? Is it truly a putrefying light like we've been told? Oops, sorry about that.
Something going on.
But yeah, definitely brown and ugly.
Yeah, well, when I was looking at it the other night, it definitely wasn't as bright, but you could still see that sort of blue shimmer that you get around the edges of it, which I find pretty fascinating as well.
Last couple of nights, it's been very yellow here. And I don't know. I tend to think it's something to do with the atmosphere here. There's a lot of chemtrailing around here as well. It's got less than over a year ago. It used to be worse. But
yeah, well, it sort of stopped around here for a while, and then the other day I seen they'd done a huge big cross in the sky where they'd gone over each other, and it's like I hadn't really ever seen that before. I've seen them do the lines like they were, almost just traveling from Melbourne to Adelaide, and they were just chemtrailing along the way. But this one was more like just a big crisscross. I took a photo of it, but it was it's disconcerting when you see that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I used to get that all the time, especially in Denver, right on top of our house. And so people would say you live too close to the airport. And it's like, I don't know. It's like always X marks the spot. And now that I'm here, I get X's too, where there'll be nothing else in the sky, but there'll be an X right over there. And it's like, what the fuck? But
they're pinpointing you.
So, what? You wonder sometimes, and then you're like, that's crazy. And it's just, again, where you are in space and time, but I notice the X's all the time, and I have for years. And the X's, when you look around them in the area, if you draw a line and do it underneath it, it's like sometimes I feel like you could attach me to a string, and it's spooky sometimes.
Do you get the ones that have that kind of shadow up into the sky kind of thing? You know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. That was one of my first couple of, things I noticed looking at the sky intently, trying to figure out what was going on in the 2015 era, is that shadow being cast upward,
Yeah.
a chemtrail. And I'm like, okay, how's that working out in your 93 million mile away sun, people? Show me that math, please. Yeah.
It's very weird. And I seen it when I first moved to the Netherlands. I was walking around. Always the moon would set on my street. Kind of my street was looking right direction, and I would be, it's funny because nobody's looking up in the sky. I would be looking up in the sky all the time, and I would see these like dozens of chemtrails being put out on the path of the sun. Usually, it's on the path of the sun. And I would go in to have a coffee where my wife was working, and I would come out like within 5 minutes. It was all scrambled somehow. It literally disappeared. They have like some sort of frequency that they can just
HARP. That's the
make it
HARP.
go
They
away.
hit it with the HARP rays. After they lay out the trails, you can see them hit it. I've got a
Spread
few
it.
videos, like in that same time period when I was videoing the sky all the time. But I've got a few that I could probably dig up if I go searching. I'd have to plug in my hard drive. But definitely,
So what's
the trails there, and like not only the wave effect, but they'll lay a trail out, and suddenly these big like globules will start descending from the trails. That was a big thing I noticed early on too. Just horrible shit.
So what's interesting, like when I've looked at this electric world model sort of thing, and the anode and the cathode, anode being the moon and the cathode being the sun. Well, when you sort of do a correspondence to that with the vacuum tubes or valves, not always have a vacuum in them, but they're sometimes just got low pressure, and seeing that as a representative between those two, you can actually find out information about, say, the chemicals or elements that they spray in the skies, and what those elements do to in a vacuum tube specifically. So they how they interact with the cathode, why they would use say strontium or aluminium, or what was the other one? But
Strontium is great when doing holograms
barium.
or holding images. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more
I remember
to do with the conductivity of the cathode, actually. So it seems maybe they're spraying them over the ecliptic to actually interfere with the operation of the sun in some way, or make it more.
The sun. Yeah, I remember the first time though I ever noticed a chemtrail in a way that those. I was in Vancouver, and there you get we're out all the time out in the sun and whatnot, and you can see the mountains, and there was these trails coming from the north. And I was out with a friend of mine who was in engineering, so these scientist types, and we were out with the dog, and then suddenly this trails coming from the north, south, very thick, and we're like, "What, dude? What the heck is this stuff?" It was definitely heavier than air, and he started freaking out at some point because the freaking chemtrails at that time, they came down onto us. You can see that they're heavier than air, and they came all the way into the street level, and they looked like a fog, to the point that my friend was dashing into the house. It's like, I don't want to be outside, and I don't know what the hell this is. And he ran inside. But we and that was back in 2008.
I wouldn't want to be inside. I'd go inside too. That's
Sorry, I have my mic.
So no way of
that
getting
time
away
it was
from
kind of
though.
rare.
Josh, can you present just my screen on YouTube so everybody can see the detail of this picture? Like I got the trifecta. I've got the shadow. I've got the globules falling down. And there's the sun. How the hell is that sun casting that shadow into those clouds? What the hell?
Wow, yeah, that's the kind of cloud. I just saw this today or yesterday. The kind of stuff, the thick thing with the, and that was very common in the north of the Netherlands here.
We've been having a lot of the modulation, where you see like modulation in the clouds.
Yeah, I'll
too,
find
yeah.
those in a minute too, I'm sure. But I was just crazy. I was talking about the globules, and there they are, and the shadow. So quick find. It was early on. Usually it takes me about 20 minutes to dig something up.
Freaky world of geoengineering. There's one thing I wanted to mention, Lucas. It's something for another time possibly, because it's long. We mentioned about the numbers in ancient world, and there's many books like the Aeneid, the poem by Virgil, that is separated in 12 books. It's all metered. Each line of poetry in Latin, you have to scan the line to see what's the rhythm in it. So it's a little puzzle in itself. Every line is a puzzle, and it follows a rules. It follows a bunch of rules, but you have long and short syllables. It's kind of like the I Ching. It has long, and one long line in the I Ching is worth, or it's similar to
You have the yin and yang lines. That's right. The short and the long. Yep.
Yeah. So all
and that's similar to
like
the
that.
Sanskrit as well, where they
Sanskrit
have
is like that as well, long and short syllables. But
and it actually measures to phi, so they're actually encoding phi in some of how they were doing.
That's the other thing that you're finding out, where they have the syllables related to numbers. And I don't know to what extent some Romans and Greeks are doing this. I know that people have found even musical notation in some Plato inscribed as numbers. And who knows, but there's something, for instance, the Bible that I'm reading in Latin. What I noticed already in the Genesis is that the author is using the poetics of Latin as a resource to make stronger points when he's this division of the waters from the waters, for instance. That part, it's very clear in the Latin when you know these rules of poetics, that he is making clear points there. And this is one of the things that when you come across, you understand that some people just have just an amazing command of their native language. Is what you see with Ovid, with Virgil. That's why you don't see it with the 16th, 17th century Latin. You don't see that. They don't have that kind of deep familiarity, but you see manipulation of the lengths of the syllables in particular ways with rhythm in order to illustrate aspects of the story even further, which is a kind of genius type of, I'm not sure if I really explained. I'll give you one example. For instance, when the soldiers from Aeneas, they're arriving in Carthage, and they're going up towards the castle, and they're going up the hill together. The whole army is going up the hill together. Virgil chooses long syllables by force. He forces all these long syllables. It's like don, 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 which is it's getting that movement of these guys drudgily going up the hill after.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And that's just
and not only that, but there's an underlying principle. They're doing those things, but they're also recognizing that the letters have a numerical value as well.
And this guy knew this too, because he tried to destroy his book before he died. The book he's a Pythagorean as well. They were looking at these Pythagorean systems of numbering and numbering the cosmos numbers and so on. So in that book, in particular, these two books, the Aeneid and the Metamorphoses. The Metamorphoses, it's like an account of a whole history and evolution of the world from the beginning all the way to the mythological times, to the War of Troy and to their period, all the way to Caesar at the time. So, and it's all metered. It's all actually in the Metamorphoses has no mistake, but the Aeneid, there's some unfinished lines, and that's why Virgil wanted to have it destroyed when he realized he's going to die in a boat trip, and luckily people didn't destroy it, because he belabored very, not slowly, but it was very hard to get the numbers right. There was something I'm trying to give you that, saying that yes, these guys probably know more than what we know about the numbers there, because he was spending a lot of time making sure that this thing was perfect to the syllable.
And yeah, and that's right. And then they're sort of hinting at, when they're writing sort of, even if it's a historical or mythological sort of account, they're hinting at these transcendent ideas, aren't they? They're putting
Yes.
certain principles of, say, phi, which is in all nature.
Well, think
the other
about it
one's
this way,
pi,
like the Aeneid having 12 chapters, right? And in the center, the 6th chapter, Aeneas enters the underworld, and he goes and sees what happens in the underworld. He enters through a passage, which is a gates in the south of Italy, in caves, and he goes into the underworld, and he sees generations past, and he sees spirits and generations in the future, and how things work in terms of who gets to be reborn and whatever in their cosmology. But that is positioned in this center point of the book for a good reason.
Yeah, and that could line up with the zodiac too. So you depending on where you start, you might start at the summer solstice, and then you're going into Hades, or that lower section at 6 months from there. Well, so that'd be the center of the book. So exactly, like they knew how to overlay information, almost like you could read it, reread it, and get different layers of information. And that's what I see with some of the mythological figures as well. Especially when you're looking at some of the Hinduism ones, they'll have multiple arms, and the arm is a measurement system. And not only that, but they're holding different types of symbols or objects in their hands.
The pineal staff and so on that comes around. There's so many things.
So that you could look at one picture and just, it will tell you a number of different associations, and there could be associated stories with that very object. So all of a sudden you can connect that one symbol with multiple different stories that give you a really deep insight of that character they're trying to portray.
Yes, and it's probably purposely codified, like you saw in that particular Vedic passage that you found, and it's obvious that they're doing some high level mathematics in there, and that is the kind of thing that I mean, there must be so much more in this literature that they are really afraid that we not afraid, but they really don't want you reading this. Like, this is one of the things I would say that in my whole career in university, the one thing that was never ever in front of us, it was really the hardest thing to get, was like a Sanskrit course or anything about these ancient Indian texts. You get references here and there. You get people looking at Homer, which is good, in all these kind of classics things I'm talking about, which is also quite obscure. Even the Metamorphosis is very famous, but people haven't read the whole thing. It's too complex. It's hundreds of characters, very difficult book, and there's so many cross references that most people, they don't have the background to even get started. They'll get lost because you get within 10 pages, you get 50 characters they never heard about, and you're missing most of the references. So it needs to be studied slowly, so it takes time. And I thought, and I went through it a lot. I still don't think I understand it, and I know Latin, but the Sanskrit stuff and the stuff from the Mahabharata, there's a whole world away. Nobody even talks about it. And when you start reading it, Homer's in there. Homer's copying it, and then there's other things too. Even in the New Testament, there's things that come straight from the Mahabharata.
Well, that's what I seem to be thinking, is that if you were going to pinpoint a reference point from which other things stemmed, it would actually be those Vedas and the Sanskrit, because it seems, and it's not only that, it seems they're operating at a much higher level than us, which in some sense, if we're sort of starting to understand where we are in the cycle of things, then we're operating quite low in this period. And so it seems reasonable that we wouldn't even be able to sort of understand these things on multiple levels. But even if we was to start to read them and take what we can, we would still be increasing our own consciousness in that sense. But yeah, definitely, if that's where everything seems to lead, even this idea of Jesus and Krishna. Well, Krishna is Christos. It's the same word. So the Christ and Krishna is the same thing. So they seem to be derivatives of these really, really high concepts that we definitely need to look into further.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, like the deeds of Krishna, the lives of Krishna, the things that he was supposed to have done. There's this one incarnation that he incarnates as a dwarf. Apparently, they call it a dwarf, but he's able to cross the world in 3 leaps or 3 steps. So it's pretty big dwarf, and he holds the firmament up at some point, and he's able to say, "There's all these stories." I mean, the early formation of the Earth stories are complicated. I need to go back, and the problem is that this is the way it is in the Mahabharata, is that yes, you do have an account of the formation, the things that happen in the early formations of the world, but there's so many different cataclysms. There's a point that the earth goes under, there's a point that the earth goes up, there's a point where the oceans are swallowed and they disappeared and they have to be spilled back. There's so many of these things, and what happens is that in the story, there's the main characters. There's many things that are happening to them, and at one point, and just to make it really, really simple, at one point they're out in an exile. They're forced into exile for I think 17 years, and they're out in the forest, living out of the woods, and many different sages start coming to visit them. And these sages tell stories about different things that happened in the past. And sometimes in those stories, you get these other accounts from earlier times. You get many of these accounts in these stories that are being told inside the story that's being told. Because it's like the Mahabharata originally, it's something that's being told in this period after the things that happen to a king. And then one guy is telling this king the story, and then inside of this, there's all these other stories happening, and people telling stories to other people inside the story, and people telling stories about a story where somebody's telling a story to other people, things like this.
Yep.
Nested levels, and you see this in the Metamorphosis, for instance, Ovid. You have this whole section where Orpheus is telling the stories. Orpheus is the one who's singing the stories for a whole while, and actually that's inside another story that's so it's like you get inside. It's almost like this.
It's the Russian dolls type thing.
Yeah.
It's one sits inside the other, and it's giving you sort of references. And even when you're talking about, say, dwarves and things like that, they may have both a literal meaning. They also may have qualities of that dwarf that actually, represent different characteristics that, because I was seeing the same when you're looking at the zodiac, and you'd say, well, Virgo holds the palm branch. And then you go, well, what's the palm represent? Oh, you find out it's a date palm, and dates relate to the finger, and then measurement, and so there's these. It's almost like there's a bunch of different sort of areas of science nested in one another. So you read the whole story, you're actually getting informed on multiple different sciences at once.
Right.
So there is complications there that we may be missing because we're not sort of schooled in actually interpreting each layer correctly, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and imagine what is not even encoded in all their architecture, because they have those amazing cymatic patterns. Like you see some crazy stuff in India that even some which I thought is completely mind blowing. How they have stones, they're tuned to particular notes. They have this kind of scale. It's like a staircase made of stone, and each step is a different note. And the top one is tuned to the Om So it's like boom, 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 boom. It's like it's a scale in a stone, and then they have in a tempo, inside the tempo, different columns that make different sounds. So you strike there's one column that you strike, it has a percussion sound. It sounds like one of those, it's like a tambourine. And other ones have notes in the stone. So they managed to tune the stone to notes and to other sounds. So I don't know.
I mean, that's just phenomenal sort of craftsmanship to actually, detail, and some of those things you're talking about are in a single stone, and you can hit different sections of it and it will create different sounds. So you're playing with not only like what sort of size or the actual type of structure you're doing, but also maybe the density of the stone in that singular section. I mean, this is some
how do they understand that?
We did used to understand how it all works, and we could now, and that's intentionally like hidden from you, and that's why again Shauna is bringing over books pre-1950s, before Parsons and before they did NASA and did what they could to strip the sciences out. And that's really when they started inserting all the heliocentric references in that overriding, again, then through your mythology atlas, again, never ever held up a globe. He only held up the celestial sky. Al-Biruni, they called the father of geodesy. No, he worked with an astrolabe based on where your location was how you looked and did the show. It was never ever, people did. I think Al-Biruni, by the way, the same man that they credit for him, he's also the same man that was the very first man to look at rocks and say not all red rocks are rubies or whatever. They have, when you crush rocks, they have different properties. Or when you do, we were talking about that on Rose's show. One of the fun ones would be, who does a screen? He can bring up a screen and bring hematite on the screen. This one we'll do again for you too, because I think it's fascinating. If you look at the name hematite, it's blood. And it's a silvery looking stone, and you're like, why would you call that hematite?
They're not red.
Now if we do a visual, do streak test hematite. Guess what? Hematite is a red crayon. If you wanted to draw red, you would use hematite, the stone, because even though it doesn't look red, the line you would draw on it on rocks or draw on anything would be red. Do you want me to share this, or does somebody want to bring that up? It's like common. I can try to share too. Let me find where I am on the tab share.
I was still digging through photos, trying to find some more of those images. Sorry, I got.
Oh no, and I'm like,
which is why I keep it unplugged during the show.
I'm looking at hematite.
Here, I'll do it. I just am such a slow person as far as
Right, they look kind of like brownish, like they don't
they're
look
like gunmetal. I mean, where's images? Let me find my Zoom and we'll share.
No, these Brazilian hematites, they look like, I'm not sure this is the same tumbled hematite. They look like metal, very shiny.
Yeah, are you talking about the hematite like that looks metallic, or are you talking about quartz hematite?
No, I'm talking about the and here we'll just see if I can get the other skin.
Yeah. These are very common in Brazil. I seen my mom has a bunch of these, and
this is like real. And we'll think about the name of it now while you're thinking about it. I'm trying to find my Zim. I am just
why does it say blood, right? Hematos.
Exactly. Greek. So you think of Greek? Why would it say Greek on it? So here now I'm going to share screen so we can put with the audience, unless Rodrigo is already doing that.
I have some here but it's on my stream that I can show the hematite. Do you want me to share screen or?
Which one was I sharing? Here, let me try it here. I'm going to try it because I'm going to do something with it. So I'm going to pick screen 2 and share. And now you guys see this? Okay. Yeah. Do you see this when I change the screen or no? Yes. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you on Google? Hematite ring.
Yeah, I see it. We're seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, the glossy sheen. I always thought it's so interesting how they felt in your hand, because it's not necessarily doesn't.
Okay, I've been playing with hematite.
Doesn't feel like metal. It's like it feels
fucking
lighter.
Of crystals, and I had no idea that it marked red.
It marks
whatever.
red.
Marks red. What the heck?
And so it's hematite. I don't know. I'm trying to bring it up. Anybody can drive better than me the
You're
way I'm
doing
trying
it.
to
I
do
see what
this.
you're doing.
But yeah, if you look at it, a way to tell it apart, like do I have hematite or not? But hematite has got a red streak. It's one of the tests you can do on it. And so if you're thinking about if you wanted to draw in red, there you go. If you wanted to draw with red, you would use hematite because your pigment is red coming from it. And so it's just, again, the stone doesn't look red, but again, when you go back to the jewelry, everybody knows the jewelry. It looks metallic.
Even these metallic ones, can you? But
Uh-huh.
if you scratch this metallic one, you're not gonna get red, are you?
No, you can. Take one of your real metallic ones. If it's real, it is. If you take your real metallic and take an unglazed white pottery and streak it on it, it will streak red.
Ah.
I mean, it's not one of our favorite tests to do with people's jewelry because it has a little bit of a destructive quality on it, but it is just giving you an information on how the world really works. And so when you think of the names then like hematite, why would it be hematite? Al-Biruni was one of the people that said, wait, these red stones, this red stone, you crush it, it's red. This red stone, you crush it, it's colorless. This one's gray. This one's harder than this one, softer than this one's more dense. He looked at the properties instead of just the color. And he was the first person to categorize rocks on paper that we know of. Everybody did. They definitely did it before that, but they credit him, Al-Biruni, with doing that. He's the father of gemology.
Is it Persian or Arabic?
Yeah, his
Persian.
Yeah, which is another way of saying Aryan, Iranian, Aryan, Persian, Aryan, Iranian, Aryan. It's the same word. So yes, he was Aryan philosopher Al-Biruni, the one that you hear of with the astrolabe, also was father of rocks. And again, now they turn around and claim he's the father of geodesy, which is a joke. It was not the world he lived in. He observed and saw what was going on. That's not the world that it was. Everybody knew the world was flat then.
Oh yeah, and remember, one of the first guys to come out to say the Earth was flat was this Islamic scholar that got totally hammered after doing so, and it was used to stereotype people from the East again. Remember that? There was that I think Jaren covered it back in 2015 or something like this. And he was saying, no, it's flat. We see it this and this and this, la 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 la. And people, they had that tradition. They know that for a long time. I don't think they lost.
This you can go back to the text, and you can go back to the drawings, and you can go back to everything and see it is what it is. But again, the way that they rewrite history now, and I think that's a lot of the skill of making everything digital now, because how easy is it for you to tag a document and change the verbiage throughout the whole world based on the algorithm of that document. You can, again, it's so easy to change out history. Right now, our children are not taught cursive language in schools, let alone, I know that just a generation before me, my parents were taught Latin in school as the norm. Everybody learned Latin. I didn't learn Latin, but I did learn how to write in cursive. At least now our children not only do not learn Latin,
even that,
but they
not
can't
even
write.
The cursive.
Nothing.
Oh my God. I remember when I was a kid, I really liked learning how to write the cursive. The
don't do that in schools anymore. They took it out of public schools in the United States 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't know, chat. It's a sin. No, the children are not taught how to write in cursive, nor can they read cursive. It's crazy. No, they're not taught to read or write in cursive in America.
Well, you can't have them pesking around and reading that old Constitution now, can you?
No, my buddy took his daughter to go get her first bank account type thing, whatnot. And when she went to sign her name, she printed it.
Wow.
She didn't know how to sign her name.
What?
That's what they do is they keep the parents so busy, mom and dad at work, 40 to 60 hours a week, drop them off at daycare, have them into soccer, never, have everything. So you have no idea what's going on. But again, when you start paying attention, what they're teaching them in the public schools, and again, as a older parent, that was, I mean, I had Darren when I was 40, and so it was like another generation removed even from when I was in school. It was completely shocking. I was like, wow, wow.
It's insane.
No cursive, no
fast.
this, no, none of this stuff. They
What
don't teach.
about-
They don't teach them how to.
No learning how to learn.
They don't learn how to
basically it.
learn anymore, or how to.
Learn how to learn.
Just repetition. And,
No more solving problems or anything like that. It's all repetition.
I was going to ask
that
you,
was
Cami.
the trivium and the quadrivium. I mean, as soon as they get rid of that sort of style of...
The Persians are huge. I mean, I look into this because I studied the history of chess to write a book that I was very interested in doing at the time, something I did for fun. But the Persians, they had their system of learning, their school system, I guess, included so many different subjects. Chess was one of them. Astrology was another. Music and languages and poetry and horse riding and archery. All these things were part of it. And even for the Romans, it was the muses, right? In the Greek and Roman model, also much more actually it would basically force you to be a critical thinker in a way, because it gives you so many different opinions and would teach you not to strawman others, at least, you know. So, I mean, of course, that we know that even in antiquity, it's not that it was freely available for everyone, and it was a different way that it was passed on, but it wasn't centralized in the way that the people, powers to be, realized they had to do it to control people. It would be easier with the church coming in and singling in on the Bible, pushing the Bible with their own interpretation, and cutting access to all the other books. And the church is the main culprit on this one.
Yep.
On holding the knowledge and getting people to just follow them blindly, and keeping all their priests maybe not even in the know, because you can't read all the stuff they have. Who knows what they have by now, because they probably have so much that it's in the Vatican libraries that you can access. But the people, even if you could, you wouldn't know what to find. It's the vast amount of shit there that they hoarded in their horrible kind of conquest, their Inquisition, their crap over 1,000. We under these guys for 1,500 years.
Just like our Smithsonian Institute here in the United States, they have like 5 different layers of underground whatever.
Oh yeah, it's like you get to see a very, like I said before, like it's a fraction of what they have actually in storage. You never know. Nobody ever know what they actually have.
And I think the Royal Society was a big part of the guardians of the scientific knowledge as well, bringing out exactly what they wanted to. So yeah, you had, which I haven't looked into, where their sort of roots are, but definitely they were changing the landscape of what is now sort of modern science. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, if they knew the history before the Great Cataclysm or the last cataclysm, whatever, might have happened, then they knew certain things that they couldn't allow take place to steer them to where they had this power. Free energy, not a possibility. We can't allow that. We need these people, dependent upon us in all these different ways.
On a very basic, sort of example, I was watching, the rail system in New York. They had all basically the tram lines and things like that, and they systematically destroyed that the more efficient transport, the more user friendly, and it was completely set up. But they systematically destroyed it to make it harder for people to travel. More costly.
To screw you over, man. It's insane. It's just crazy.
That's just a very basic one. That's right.
Yeah, there's so many examples of that. The petrochemical industry coming in and destroying the whole, steering the whole society towards this chemicals of death, really, like thinners and I forget what it is that they use as antibiotics. It's some sort of petrochemical byproduct. It's all messed up, just pushing their death industry. And
Yeah, well, that's the same as Roundup. I mean, Roundup itself is a antibiotic.
Right? That was horrific. It was horrific.
And that does, and people have done studies into that and what it does to the biome in humans and how it starts destroying that biome, being an antibiotic, anti-life, and giving people huge amounts of problems by ingesting it. You know, and then then they come out and say, "Oh, you can drink a cup of this; it won't even hurt you." I mean, it's just
it's like their DDT
insane.
and the polio, right? The DDT campaign, spraying kids. They had this thing where they spray chemicals on children. It's totally insane. I mean, the kinds of things they did in the name of science in the 20th century is just one crazy thing after another. I was going to ask.
Well, I mean, we're in the dark ages for sure.
Yeah, I think we are kind of. Yeah, I was going to ask Cami. I'm looking here at like a hybrid hematite with red jasper. And what is that? What is a jasper? How does it get? Is there any clues to how these things are formed? Hematite. I mean, I'm just kind of speculating, thinking about some of the information that I saw from Stellium, which
Jasper's a motorbike, isn't it?
It's expensive.
Is it?
I don't know. I see this one is a $325 for a ball, 64 millimeter ball of hematite mixed with red jasper. But I don't know.
Cammie,
I don't know if
we lose you.
You might have lost.
We may have lost her. She's got.
I'm not sure if you've seen, if any of you guys seen the conversation. Probably not. I had this 4-hour conversation with Stellium 7, and he was showing me a video that some other guy who was looking at odd geology, to say the least, things that look biological, but they're geology that looks biological, and some of the stuff was mind-blowing, especially these spirals that seem to cork out of the earth and that look exactly like the spirals we have in the spores on our skin. And then also hair follicles, like things that look like we would be the size of bacteria. And then indications that certain rocks might be cells, petrified cells.
There's weird. A guy, Roger, Mud Fossil University. I've been watching him for some years now, and that's kind of his wheelhouse as well. Is that idea of basically we're trotting upon giants at the moment.
We most certainly are.
In older cosmologies, when they describe the world as well, they use the great god had hair, and they likened, and this is where you get the representation as well of, say, the sun and the moon, or the two eyes of this great being and things like that. So they definitely made these parallels to, the bones of the earth and all this sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, there's many giant beings in the, at least in the Vedic stories. Garuda is the power bird that powers the earth. It's part of like all the earth is power. It's like a fire bird, power bird, whatever it is. It's a huge. The gods are scared of it. It's too strong. Even I think Indra or even Vishnu, they kind of say we need to kind of, we need to appease it, or we need to kind of, be careful about it, or something. It's interesting to see those stories. And we look at, I think we exchanged some information, that coil, the Ananta, the snake coil under the earth, that it goes under the earth as a coil to give it more stability at some point. After there's this whole story of the earth going under and the oceans being swallowed, like I told you, there's like at one point there's a sage that they say swallows the oceans. It's like, and there's also there's some similarities with the Bible, in that they talk about some entrances some gates in the firmament in different positions,
Yep.
and they tell you where they are. It's
Yeah, like that's, you're going to the Enoch sort of thing, and they talk about, these portals or gates. But if you actually look at it as a looking at a horizon line and follow where the sun actually moves through the zodiac, well, each of those between 2 points is a gate. So when he's talking about the gates, is basically following the zodiac through its cycle, and each position, 30-degree position is a gate. So there's so many gates, and then when you see the sun and the moon in those 2 gates, that's when it's your equinox, and he's basically describing the calendar.
Yeah, that's similar as well. But I'm talking about some stories describing like physical structures sometimes. But that's different. That is also there. I could try to dig these things at some point and collect them. I've done some charts, but not everything I wanted to do. But I wanted to collect these stories about cities that are positioned in the firmament, along the firmament, and sometimes even under the water. Some creatures supposedly have cities under the water in the Vedic stories, right? Because in the Vedic
they talk
stories,
about. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
No, there's just so many different beings. I was just going to finish with that, because it's not just there's humans and aliens. There's a big number of different species or completely different beings, and they're not in the same class. And like the Apsaras and Gandharvas, these are different than the Nagas. They're different from other beings. Some Garuda, for instance, in a particular class of its own. Then you have the Rishis that seem to be immortal, that travel with the speed of thought and go to different worlds. It's and then there's also the possibility of people. There's one story of one of these guys who are living in the heavens with some of the heavenly worlds, and then he offends one of the gods there by putting his foot over their head or something like that. Puts the foot on someone's head, and that's like a big no. It's like no, the insult. So he gets cursed to go back to the earth as a snake, but he's an invincible snake. Nobody can kill the snake or conquer the snake or do any, not even the strongest man. And the only way that he can go back to heaven is if someone answers these questions about justice, or these hard questions. And in the story, in the Mahabharata, the one Pandava, who's the incarnation of justice, of Dharma, feels that his brother is in danger because he's being caught by the snake. And the snake can devour him, but he saves him. But
that's interesting, because it sort of resembles this idea of the Ouroboros, which is the snake eating its own tail, and it relates actually to this idea of Mercury again, which is in this sort of
Mercury staff.
It's in the idea of this cycling energy that keeps moving from one point up into heaven and then back down, where that communication between heaven and earth. So there's cycling of energy, and Mercury's sort of elemental name is Hydra Gyrum, and Hydra is basically like that regenerative water snake, and Gyrum means circle. So it's in the name itself that it's showing it's the Ouroboros. And so much of this old mythology is about this concept of the ever-present moment, as well as this idea of the Trinity, which you have your 2 polarities, and then that central point that is both positive and negative joined together, from which everything extends. So those sort of stories are very powerful ways of explaining these concepts in a different way you may not have thought of.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Caduceus, which is the staff of Mercury, the one that has the 2 snakes intertwined going up, which is related to Kundalini and so on. And here's I'm just going to post here in the chat. There's a Sumerian example of it. Even the Sumerians had This is one here from Wikipedia, from a vase, a libation vase. So who knows what they're doing with it? But there's definitely more going on. It goes back. In India, they had these symbols. In Sumeria, they had these symbols, and it's just basically.
And that's where you sort of get these ideas for the 33, which you have 33 vertebrae in your spine, and those the chakra system, which is a big part of how to actually get that chakra system acting how it should and getting the energy flowing how it should. And that's what a lot of these practices of either meditation or even the yogic practices, which was yoga means union, which was basically to align the spine and keep it supple and keep it moving. So a lot of these practices are about understanding how our body works and getting the energies and the brain switched on, in a sense.
Yeah, it's they call it the liquid fire Kundalini as well. You see that the whole medicine, Eastern medicines and acupuncture and Chinese medicine has everything to do with the meridians of the body and the different how the nerves connect and where are the points that can be obstructed and how to liberate them and so on.
And it's interesting with when you're talking about meridians. I mean, that whole system there is mapped via phi, so it's finding 5 points in 5 points in your, so your body's got phi incorporated in it, but you're finding another 5 point between those 5 points, and that will actually lead you to an acupuncture.
Have you guys done acupuncture before?
I've had it, yeah.
Can we hear me yet or no?
Yeah.
Do I have audio back? Okay, good. I'm sorry. I had to reset my my headphones were being crazy. I wanted to add in on the Ouroboros and how you guys are looking at them, and you're on an alchemical level, which is fabulous. When looking at a creation and a construct level, the Ouroboros, or the snake going around, also plays into on another level when you decode the puzzle, like when you're looking at the construct. And the snake represents, by the way of its moving in a sine wave, and the hissing, it represents pretty much electricity or the EM scale, and it going around and eating itself is the boundary. In other words, when we had a boundary set around, if you look at the realm, we really do have an electrical running boundary that would be a snake eating each other, or a continual loop or circuit would be your way of saying it. And if you do this, again, looking at the two dipoles and connect your boundary around them, you'll find that all compasses can do nothing but go to the counter space created by the quadrupole in the center. So each one of your symbologies that you're taking on an alchemical level and decoding, you can go also into a complete construct level. And on the construct, that snake eating itself is very much the boundary that in the Bible that was set, or on all the different things. Again, it's usually represented, the best representation you can give it, a snake, a sine wave, hissing, your electricity doing it, and it has to do the circuit eat itself in order to do this in ships. And in technology, we would call running a degaussing line around it. And we do that. Again, so we learned about doing this in the wars so the mines would not blow up the ships. You ran the line around the lines, and then all of a sudden you couldn't read it, which is why your compasses go crazy anytime you go near the south. Other than that, compasses could never work the way they do, but they do work the way they do if you look at our magnetic field and lay it out and add little things like a boundary that's electrical, as in represented by that eternal snake eating itself, a circuit. That is a circuit. Just like on another, I'm going to share screens in a minute.
We know of the cults of Asclepius in antiquity. There's some places where people leave testimonies of going there and being cured, and it's all about snakes. And the hissing is a really important sound you see in early pre-Socratic poems that have to do with trancing, people getting to trance in this sound, the sibling sound being repeated. It's sort of part of getting into that trance. So that is known. And usually what people would do is that they go to this place, Epidaurus. They'll go on a pilgrimage to Epidaurus. There they would spend the night in a particular place, or they would dream of the god Asclepius, and then they would use snakes there. I don't know if they knew the chemical properties of some poisons. I don't know if they could use that. Nobody really knows. But people reported getting cured. Yeah, just. And I was going to ask you, like, alchemy. Usually, words that start with "al" are Arabic words. Is alchemy with that root is coming from Persians or from?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And it's related to Egyptian.
It was actually,
as well, I think.
It started off as chemia, and then the Persians added the al to it, alchemia, right. And then the Europeans took away the ia and just named it alchemy, and then stripped it of all the spirituality and turned it into chemistry.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I can not find the files I just downloaded and was doing it too. I'll look for them a different way, but even here, magnetic fields. This one hit last night. God, this was a. Oh, okay. I'm going to share again. Hold on.
Yeah, well, the caduceus is, when you're looking at it, it's basically a representation of the two energies in the body, which is your, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And then you've got the spinal column and things. So, it's about getting those two functioning evenly. And, even the zodiac has this idea of, moving energy in a circle or cyclic sort of way. And actually, using different sort of breath techniques to actually, it's encoded to show how to refine certain elements within the body to do certain functions. So,
can people see my screen right now?
It's a big subject.
Yeah. What I'm going through here, the loop, this is a dipole magnetic field, and this is called a loop, what we're talking about. And guess what happens when you have a loop? You have an owl. Do you see the owl eyes?
Mm-hmm.
Now look at this. When you complete a loop, what happens to your owl eyes? One is open and one is closed. You also have the one eye symbolism along with your owl symbolism right there, all in a magnetic loop if you want to look at what the pattern really looks like.
Right.
Do you see that on the loop?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there you have your one eye symbolism and your owls. Again, each one of your levels of it too, you're going to come up with an alchemical, but in creation and magnetics and this, it's there is your one-eyed owl. Just fun stuff. I saved these all to a folder and they're all gone now, but go ahead. I'm so sorry. Look.
Wow. And just looking at some really strange stones. Do you know this limonite?
Limonite.
Limonite.
Spell it for me.
It's like limon, Limon.
Okay, limonite mineral.
Weird.
So this one I'm reading about, it currently used for massive hydroxides and iron oxides of iron with no visible crystals, a yellow-brown streak. So again, that streak test that I'm telling you about, what color does it write? That's something that we always take and know. Limonite is, I'm reading about limonite or iron ore. It's very boring looking. Yeah, there's tons and tons of different things. Nobody brought limonite. I'll share this. Let me share this screen. While I did used to work, I worked in industry, but I worked in the jewelry industry. So nobody brought me pieces of limonite in the rings to get. So I'm learning myself going out in nature and doing this. It's a whole different.
Check this one out. I have it on the chat here. This is the weird one I found.
But this one on the properties, we'll go to it. It will tell you again what its formula is. It's mostly iron.
Iron again.
Uh-huh.
Which is hematite also heavy on iron.
Right. Colors, various shades of brown and yellow, crystal habit, finely grained aggregate, powdery coating, cleavage absent, uneven fracture, very most scale 4.5 to 5. It's not very hard. Earthy, yellowish brown, opaque. And yours, I'm going to stop sharing and let you bring it up. But here's like galena. Isn't that pretty?
Weird. What is galena? Is that the
I've got some of that at home, actually, a big rock of galena. It's got the silver and the lead in it.
Silver,
yeah. They used to use it in radios, I think.
Well, look at that inside the stone.
This is what you call the concretions, and your concretions are your spherical. So do you like that? This is a part sphere.
Weird. Yeah, this.
Yeah, naturally things.
Things make spheres in nature.
They do the. I'm screen sharing now, but here, let's.
If they're bacteria,
God, I'm so bad.
I think some of these things could be organelles of bacteria that have been mineralized.
Absolutely.
But crystals, and I'm starting to build this right now, but crystals, when you think of platonic solids and you think of crystals, this is magnetite growing naturally. You'll notice the octahedron. Platonic solids, and this is nice. Notice your truncated.
What do you mean by magnetite growing naturally? What do you mean growing?
This is how it grows, and this is how crystals grow. They the elements are present. They grow, and they grow in these lines. They grow in perfect, what you would call platonic solids. This is a diamond. That's a natural diamond. Octahedron, that tells you how to read it. The vertex, the bases, and the edge. That's our poles. But okay, let's go back on
this
that
is
one.
where you're getting to the ideas. You know, even back in the old sort of ideas of this duality, or that matter and pattern idea, where you have there's the pattern and then matter interacts with it, so there's that sort of polarity, and that's essentially what you're seeing here. There's
they grow. I mean, this is the stellated octahedron quartz. This is how it grows. It's nothing was done to that. That tells you what its geometry is. That I just found from years ago in Iron Realm, by the way, doing the realm on the thing at the beginning. Even with do you remember?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I found this and it was lost for years, and we'll work on it. But this is first looking at the realm under Terra, the trees, doing it magnetically. In other words, you see your red and your blue exchange, and the way it feeds in and goes through Rahu.
That's kind of like isn't that
coming down?
Isn't that kind of like the model of the world as it's like a tesseract or a cube with the up and down top sort of?
I was following our magnetics from the quadrupole in the center. So I did a quadrupole on magnetics. This is a magnetic pattern. And everywhere on the separate, I noticed that we had the four corners and they pop out, and you have the two pillars out here, but this you have like a dome in here. But if you started putting properties to things, like if these were magnets, for instance, and you made them very cold, they would take on a property called magnetic circling and magnetic mirroring, very cold, where it's going to mirror everything down and circle it. So I personally believe that we see three rotations from the same. And you can see how it focuses down by the way that the magnets work. Are you following it? That as it bounces, here's K2. Think it optically. I'm sorry, Rahu. This is Rahu. So Rahu, as it does it on the optics, it's going to come down on the south pole here. And here, depending on what side of the world it is optically, but it will come down to everybody in the North Pole over this. So you would have the moon. Remember, it's opposite. Here's the moon. Here's the sun. So here's the sun where it is in the sky, moon, and moon. But optically, each pole would have to create a circling dome, just like we have in the center or North Pole. You're missing the fact that we have two more poles on our map if we do our magnetics, and they would have to also have that circling. People aren't putting in that circling, and that circling has to happen. So even if the star field was one giant field, though, I actually think the skies, do you want to go on this tangent and I'll show you the skies?
This is interesting.
I love this.
What's the point of so how did the crystals, the Kabbalistic sort of crystals over there, and the higher chakras, I guess, how do they play a role here in this projection?
I can show you. It's all resonance. It's the same thing
Right.
as your chakras is your red.
As above. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Your red, your orange, your yellow, your green, your aqua, your indigo, which they took out of the rainbow, and violet. It's these are your colors. These are your resonances, your chakras. If you read them on 1, 2, this is missing on the Sephiroth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's your fractal of life. It is your fractal of life, and so everything you can put into it. You can put in your. Do you want to see me? I can show it. Messy put in.
Yeah, basically just fits in that the sacred geometry of that flower of life. So
Seraphite, yeah.
yeah, it's what it's taken from.
Let's see. I have to get on. I don't know. I'm going to have to stop sharing and bring up another folder because I don't know how to minimize this folder. I'm really bad, but I want to show you a different folder. So hold on. Aha.
You'll notice, Rodrigo, we have mastered the art of the uncomfortable silence here on IRM.
Yeah, that's why we all laughed a little or smiled really big when you brought that topic up early on in the discussion. There's nothing, we don't mind marinating on an idea and a thought, for sure.
Silence is important.
It is very important.
All right. So if you guys remember on the polls, when I was saying the polls, and I'm missing some of the artwork on here, but on the polls, remember you have a poll right here and a poll right here. But let's see. Here you go. This is how we map the skies right now and how they take it to a ball. And this shows you, we see the skies as flat. And I'll show where I got it from. And this is how we wrap it onto a ball, by the way. I believe that we see the sky just like it is shown here. And let's see, just like it's shown there. And this is when you see a panorama of our sky. You'll see your south poles and your north poles. This one you see the full pole on from where you are. One of our poles is off the edge. And if you look at, again, these are our sky charts. If you look at it and the way that they fold over, they would lay over pole, pole, pole over our land. The pole that we don't see, that south pole that you don't see all of the way from South America and from Africa, the one that's further away. You see here, if you go back, I'm going to take you back to your declination. That is a spinning pole. The skies are spinning over it. This is where they're converging it there. Your other one is over here, and you can see 1, 2, 3, the one off of the map. It's mapped. We see the whole sky. They can't fudge it. It's not like the ground. That for the ground we have to. For the ground we have to. Again, open it up again. There's pieces, but these ones where they're open, the sky is correct over it. If you put that sky the way we see it and map the sky, it works. The visuals over it, what I wanted to say was the visuals over it. If you look at your declination map here and you pretend like you're in South America and you're told because of your declination, which way do you need to point to see the South Pole? Guess what? You're all looking because you're magnetic. You're pointing here. You're in South. You're in Africa. You're told where to turn to see the pole. You're turning here.
That's right.
If you're in Australia on this side, you're told to turn this way to look. If you're on this side, look. You're over here. You're told that your center pole or where your center of rotation is here. The North Pole, this is our center of rotation. When you look at the domes, it's a tri-dome. There's 3 domes over. You have your big dome in the center. Look at your churches. Look at every doorway. It's always done in 3 domes, 2 smaller and a center one, and we miss what's right in front of us. But here's your small dome, and your big dome. And when we, again, map our sky convergence, and the way we see the skies, or we see the way that we go.
Don't they call that treyarch?
Treyarch, yeah. Here, I'm going to even watch this. Watch this. We'll do this really fun. Oops.
I have
new
a
tab.
friend that you might want to get to know. She's a lady from
Panorama.
Cami from New Zealand, and she's written this book. She's working on it. It's like a 2,000-page thing. She's calling the Archaeology of Consciousness, and she's here as Threads in Time, and she's saying, 20 years ago, I physically executed the spin processes, combinations of unlocking the Sephora to ascend the tree with 11 others in ancient Egyptian ceremonial magic. Cami would be interested, I'm sure, she says.
Totally. Are you guys looking at my screen here? Let's see if I can make it bigger. I'm doing a panorama of star trails. And when we put things together on cameras, you'll see that this is a flow. And if you look at...
So there's a pole missing. Is that what you're pointing out to?
Yeah, the one that's off of the map where you don't see the pole is off of the map. So you see the three. And that's how remember those pictures I showed you of, let's go back to where I got this picture from. Maybe this will help you. But look at this picture good. Keep it in mind, or keep any of these in mind. Also, when you look at the poles, I can tell you that this is from the southern hemisphere because of the way, see how it looks like you're tunneling down into it? Also here, that's a southern star rotation.
Wait, what? That's fake, right?
Yeah, that one was fake. But this one is real. And this is how we see, these are real star trails. This is how we see stars converge in our sky.
It's like a tunnel, right? It looks like a tunnel.
And they look like tunnels. So you have north, and then again south. But we already know this is happening. This is how we take it. And if you were to look at your sky, so I'm going to make this go down to the sky. And let's go here. Let's go to AANDA. Everybody can link here. Maybe I'll drop this into the chat for you. But this will tell you for people that read the say the word for me, Zach. Ephemeris. Ephemeris, thank you. For everybody reading the ephemeris and doing the astrology, you'll see these are your coordinate transformations. Object coordinates are usually given at the equatorial is getting you all your ecliptics, your transformation.
Astrology is totally a flat earth thing, right?
It is a flat. This is this is astronomy, though. If you're azimuthal coordinates, but if you look here and go down, they show you exactly how they're doing it. Here it is. This is how we see the sky in one piece. And when we put it on the ball, we're going to map it like this. We're going to say it in reverse. But this is really how, when we take panoramas, how we see the sky. And here's this one. This pole here is right underneath Australia. This one here is the one that we're going to call Atlas Island, the one that was banned. I think that's where the dome was broken on the Flammarion, which...
So that's the one that's between South America and Africa?
Yes. Yep. And it's here, right here, where behind your screen. Let's move us. Oops. Oh, we have lots of things to do here. So if you move this, I believe that it's a physical thing. Cami can't screen very well, but it's where I'm showing you on the Flammarion.
Where he's peeking through?
Where he's peeking through. You see where he's peeking through? I believe that this is represented, again, in the Flammarion, it's done as a tree. So when I did the other artwork
that picture is just like an analogy for someone that's starting to understand the world and looking at the mechanics of the world.
No, it's not. It's much more than that. If you look at this, this one is modified to fit my screen. It's stretched in that. But if you do look at this, this is telling you something much more. Look at what I'm pointing to, Lucas. This is Rahu, the dark sun. This is K2, the moon. And they are outside your wheels, your layers. They're coming in as the sun and the moon. And because of its higher and coming down at it, you have your crescent. It's giving you positions. It's encoded. This is a woodcut intaglio that was done in black and white, and we'll bring it up in different ways. If I find my folders again,
I read a lot of his work actually because he's a spiritist, and he was an astronomer, French astronomer, and he
Camille Flammarion.
Flammarion.
Okay, this is Camille Flammarion, and this is originally how it was. It's a woodcut. It's intaglio. If you think of
Engraving,
the difference, no, it's not an engraving.
No?
Engraving, think about engraving down into it. Think of an intaglio ring where it's all raised, like your knight coming up on your dad's ring, the signet rings and that. An intaglio is raised. He did this all in raised woodcut. The art on this is off of the scale. Your information on here, again, you have your sun and your dark moon right here coming in through it, your man on the dome, but you have all kinds of information in here. Your person in the tree. There's numerology hidden in here. There's I disagree that this is a casual piece of art. Camille Flammarion did not draw it.
Didn't we
Found
find
it. He found it, and nobody
ruler
knows.
somewhere along the edges or something? Like, like a ruler, and we found
Here, I'll show you what that's on. That's on I can show you.
Yeah, as far as I know, his astronomy work as well, and he believed in a heliocentric model. It has some books from
Who? No, he didn't. Well, I don't think so. But no, he didn't.
But have you read his books?
I have not, because you're missing the point on the Flammarion. He did not draw the Flammarion.
No, I know. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong about anything.
No,
I'm just saying.
You're missing the point.
Yeah, I got it. He found
it. It was old when he found it. It was hundreds of years old when he found it.
I don't think he would have understood.
He doesn't. He didn't know where it came. No, I think it is. It's the knowledge passed in on there. I think he did read occult, but if you
well, I mean, I'm just saying from what I know. I read several of his books, like 10 of his books, and I read his whole series on the mysteries of death. Like it's called Death and Its Mysteries. It's like a 4-book series, but that is like his studies in metaphysics, where he was asking people if they had any sort of experience when someone that they knew died, if they had any sort of extraordinary experience, to send him a letter. And he had hundreds and hundreds of letters. So he published that. That was very interesting. So you don't get really his astronomy there. But then his other books on astronomy, he's like the precursor. He has this book called, in Portuguese, called The Narratives from the Infinite. But essentially is a kind of, it's almost like is the narrative we get from Einsteinian relativity. Like, is the idea essentially?
That's all. I don't know. Weird. Yeah, I didn't go there. He did not, but he had nothing to do with this. In other words, it's called the Flammarion.
That I believe that. Yeah.
Okay. The fact of the matter is that this is published in a book, and it's called the Flammarion Engraving. And there's 2 things about it that are wrong. It had nothing to do with Camille Flammarion, and it's not an engraving.
Right.
That's what gets my attention, not going into the history of Camille Flammarion, but the fact that it had nothing to do with him. He found it and published it. It was not his work. It's not his. It was not his bailiwick, and yet it's his most famous thing. It's the Flammarion engraving. This is on a tarot card. As far as Easter eggs.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, that was where it was.
Okay, the High Priestess.
But I know we found some stuff.
Should we go into totally controversial land right now and see who we can trigger? Because I believe that there are triggers that are embedded in everybody. And one of the triggers I think that's embedded heavily throughout is this cross trigger right now. If you believe in the Bible, you believe the tarot cards are evil and a sin, and you should not look at them. Does everybody agree with that? Biblical.
I'll be going to hell there because I played the tarot for.
No. It has no. It's just a thought that, as far as with the Bible, if you believe in the Bible, you shouldn't believe the tarot cards, right? If you believe in the tarot cards,
I know people who do both.
Okay.
A lot of people who do both.
Doesn't matter.
You should. If you believe in the tarot cards.
Yeah, say if you're Catholic.
Yeah.
Then it would be bad.
Okay, I grew up Catholic, so that was my vision on it. Is you're Catholic, do not touch the tarot cards. Now, there are people that go into a cult, do nothing. You can trigger them by mentioning the Bible or anything Christian or biblical. They go entirely ballistic and trigger that. That's all bullshit. It's all. Again, you can get triggers in both directions. Now you can throw the third trigger in that scientifically, they're going to call anything biblical or tarot garbage. pseudoscience and crap. And so what you do is you have this cross thing of not only do these things all do triggers, but they all cross each other. I'm going to say something very, very controversial that I've sat on for a long time, and that is that the Talmud would never be the companion for the Torah. I believe the Torah did have a companion, but the Torah, if you understand the way that it was written, that the written word was the collapsing of the waveform, the oral word. Your companion would not be written or oral, because the Torah itself is oral. It's writing down the waveform of the oral. Do you follow what I'm saying?
It's also,
how it,
it's
okay,
also another word for rotor.
So
no,
it's
there's
don't no stay on topic a minute.
I'm
don't
on topic.
digress
I'm on
on it.
topic. Just
But
add a
your
point.
your Talmud, if it had, or your Torah, if it had a if you had a correspondence to the Torah, it would probably be a pure visual with nothing written or nothing like that, with just embedded. So like, for instance, when you talk about a cubit and how big a cubit is, you would want to know it's really a ratio if you're building something in scale. So you would look for embedding. Is that right now she has the column of Joachim and Boaz, and embedded here is a little ruler here. There's a number 1 up to the size of a column. I believe that you have information. If you look in here, the numbers in that, she'll tell you she's holding the Torah. This goes with the Torah. It's information.
Well, you can't see the other T, so it's just tarot.
Torah. Well, I'm just telling you that locking it up in different ways.
I mean, these things have been drawn in myriad of ways, so it's going back hundreds of years.
No, that's right. They've been back. They're the original.
Slightly different, but they all contain some similar symbols.
There's ones that are more reliable.
It's another representative of the Trinity. I mean, you got the two polarities, and that central.
I was just going to say that
in
ancient cultures, first of all, I mean, indigenous cultures, they don't even need writing because they had memories and they believe in.
No, that's what this. Yeah, this is the oral translation. When you set the 2 pillars correctly in tarot, you would probably get. You would if you do. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, for instance, the Romans, the notion they had to write in order to execute perfectly the speech. The speech was way more important than the writing. That's I'm just going along with what you're saying there. It's most the writing is just there to have you remember certain things, but you see the meticulousness in which things had to be pronounced. For the Romans, if someone butchered one syllable, depending on the format, they had to go back to the whole thing and declaim it again. Mm-hmm. And it's similar with indigenous historians, oral historians, who had to learn these huge genealogies and stories by heart.
I believe that what you're saying is true on this cards too. I believe what you're saying is true as much as on the tarot cards, that you had to have the elements correct on the certain ones in order to do it. The world in tarot, if you look at her, she's holding the 2 pillars to create the 4 corners of the world. And she's using bounding it with the electricity. Again, it's the same.
Yeah, the tarot is basically tarot is basically a zodiac.
Look at that. You have
put it in the right order. So
that's a different level. It's much more than the zodiac. You have the 4 corners of the world. It's a map. When you say the
like that was 21, the number there, right?
Well, I didn't
you guys
say
are
it was
looking.
I'm saying that, but I'm just saying it's a zodiac as well. So
and the Wheel of Fortune images.
Yeah, that one is
sure.
And I remember,
even related to karma and things. Yeah.
It's telling you where the 4 corners are, where the poles are. It's mapping, actually. It's more than this. Map this up with your Indian maps. This is actually a directional. You run the electricity, your snake around it. There's much more in your Sphinx, by the way. Matches up with all of the old texts on Asherah or Anu. Yeah,
it's clear that they're codifying knowledge into cards, but they're also using the cards oracularly, which is quite interesting too, and how that works. Because
It's a way to embed them with
Wow.
different things for different people, so you don't. So the people that want to know the truth, you can pass down the knowledge through generations while making silliness and writing fortunes and things like that into the rest of the people. So it keeps the cards intact and in circulation, but it has everybody reading them entirely wrong by trying to read people's fortunes out of them instead of saying what they really are, which is an informational database for pattern. It's a pattern database. Just at that.
What do you think about the other kind of arcanes or whatever, the minor, whatever they call it? The
Minor arcana was added afterwards. I think it was part of the storytelling, but I do know that on there, like even in songs and that, they reference it in songs. So like when you're talking about the devil playing with the thief or whatever, they are talking about. Yeah. Oh my God, Karen, the world card, of course. Yes. When you even, this truth is channeled down and it's written in song even in that. So when you hear about the devil doing with the thief, these are all tarot cards. These stories, a lot of them you can take it to tarot cards.
Right. Was that also the Ouroboros on that world card with the kind of wreath or whatever?
Yes, it was. There was the Ouroboros on there.
You want me to show you something real quick? I'll share screen.
Yeah. Am I still sharing? Let me stop sharing. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Have you started looking into I Ching at all, Kemi? Yet? Because I know you're gonna go crazy with that if you.
No, see, I'm not. I'm looking at it. I think
you
you can fractal it down to all of these things because, again, I understand that it fractals down to it, but I'm taking it in a lot of people have done this. In other words, that's not a area I need to.
Just
Karen, this is more Karen than me on the health. I haven't done any of that. I've looked at properties and I'm crossing it over from properties. So I haven't taken, though I do know that the chakras and that. Oh, I meant to. Yeah.
I'll just show you how I've found that the zodiac fits with the tarots. Basically, got the Fool and the Centaurs represented as sort of like the mercurial figure that goes on the journey. And so you can see the symbolism in the Emperor card. Is basically got the Aries symbols, and is also, you look at the colors behind, like the sun and where they are, and you'll see that the actual colors, this is the daytime, and then you can see that the sun is actually, going out, and then it comes back to life in the springtime. So it's giving you a day.
Wow,
yeah. I see the Fool on the hill too, going round and round. I see that song in it.
The other one as well. That's right.
Yeah. So here you've got Aries, and you can see the ram symbolism for him. She's got Venus, which is Taurus, and then you've got Gemini, and you've got the two people there, and this sort of central. It's all encoding Mercury sort of figures as well. Cancer, and it's it's encoding as well this movement of a time period of life. So this would be the birth, and then as the person gets older, so full of strength, and then by the time he gets to Leo and he's say 30 to 35 years old, then he's starting to wield basically power over his mind and body. So this is more the he's got more success with his body here rather than his mind, and then it's fully sort of matured at this stage, and you get this they all got a dualistic symbolism, and you can see down here, it's not super clear, but it's got the this mercurial sort of wings with the point in it, and it's got the top, which means it's related to Cancer, because it's that's the top of the sun, where the sun's at its highest peak. So yeah, you got the Magician, and these two sort of go together. You've got the two this infinity loop over the top, and this is the height of the sun, usually in Leo, and then she's got strength because she's basically Virgo. She's able to quell the strength of the sun. So she's got the lion there and she's shutting its mouth. And so that's, you end of your day where the sun sort of gets reduced. Then you got obviously Libra here, which is all about justice. She's got the scales and the sword and that sort of idea. And then you've got the Hanged Man. So this is when you're getting into the night. There's a bit more symbolism to do with that, and that's a Scorpio. Then you go into basically your death. This is your Hermit, so this is the last little bit of your life in a sense. And, he's got his little torch and he's old and whatnot, and then he's going to meet with death in the next one. And then there's like this death and birth again sort of happen. And so the High Priestess is basically your Vesica Pisces, or the birth. She has like the symbols behind her with this type of fruit.
Right behind it.
Yeah, type of fruit is
pomegranate.
to do. Yeah, the pomegranate is to do with birth and all that
Fertility,
sort of stuff
yeah.
as well.
It looks
And
like
she's
a cell.
the waters. Yeah. So coming through the two. So yeah, that's basically it. And then you have your planets and things down the bottom here. So the sun, the moon, and you can basically lay these cards out like you would a zodiac to see where, you could lay it out like this, and then just basically put the planets where they would be in each house, and you're going to start to get an idea of where things are. It's almost like just doing an astrology reading. And so, yeah, you got this sort of the top card here that is the whole thing in one sense. It's also almost like the top of the pack. But there is also some encoding in just the names of the cards and the numbers of the cards. So when you do the names of the planets and things down here, you end up with 361, which is that monad idea, the circle with the point in the center and stuff. So that's basically what it is. It's a way of laying out the zodiac. So yeah, it's a very cool. It's got a lot of cool little symbolism in here, especially with looking at the magician, or used to be the juggler. He's got the 4 elements with him. He's got this the red rose and this white lily, signifying different things of sort of passion and purity. And he's got a belt that's a snake, so symbolizing the Ouroboros, and the white and the red, this purity and passion idea. So, and this is this sort of marriage here in a sense as well. So there's lots of things to gain out of actually having a look at this, the cycle of the year via this layout gives you a lot of detail. So there you go. That's a little share there. Hopefully you found that enjoyable. I don't know how to get out of this now.
It's there at the same little area, I think, at the bottom somewhere. Yeah, that was pretty cool, man. Crazy.
I probably should be finding a way onto out, because it's 3:34 a.m.
Yeah, we usually wrap it up around 30 minutes ago, actually, Rodrigo, man. But It's just been so good, it kind of kept going. So we usually keep it around 3 hours.
On and on. No, it's great to have this kind of learning experience.
I know it.
And hashing out different things. Yeah, I think is quite interesting. I'm also interested in the astrology or astronomy of the Vedic astrology, because it seems to be, there's this whole study of the doctors who have really great results, who are trained like in the regular kind of doctors, but they also train in Vedic astrology, and they can get they have to look at the stars before giving diagnosis for someone, and they get better results than normal doctors. So I'm curious about that, but also in how to translate how these different models of the sky can be somehow harmonized. I don't know. I haven't even looked into that, obviously. I'm just saying it's interesting, because there are some quite detailed studies by Chinese astronomers from the 11th century and earlier on. And these guys are heavy into the Earth was square for them. We had the round sky, the heavens, circular heavens, I guess, in the square.
Yeah,
Earth.
that circle and the square sort of symbolism.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
the two
We
sort
can
of
do that.
spirit and matter. Yeah.
Four corners. I have another overlay that's really cool if you guys want to see it.
Yeah.
Do you have a minute?
I'm
or you
probably
have to
going to
stop?
I'll do it.
bail in a bit too. Yeah.
No, I'll go. I'll take a look. Let's take a look.
I think you better make
Okay.
it quick, Kimmy, before we lose
Pardon?
everybody. So you better make it quick before we lose everybody.
Okay, I'll do it really, really quick. Okay. Da, 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 da. Okay, so you remember this on the realms, right? And this is taking your realms physical, soul, earth, the firmament right here, high heaven, right?
Mhm.
So let's do now. And then, hold on. You guys are familiar with pyramid geometry.
Mhm.
Here's your pyramid, your ascending passage, you're descending, you're taking your phi ratios and everything. Familiar with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's see. If you overlay the one on top of it, so if I take your Sephiroth and I take your realms of your Sephiroth, they will actually line up and give you directions on how to get to your, take them in the middle, how to take your passages up to heaven and down to it, matching up to the pyramid.
That's pretty cool.
Just on a fun realm that it will line up with the heavens and that on it. So, and again, every time I move it, it jumps down. So I will quit undoing that, but it's a fun, I'm going to lock it into undoing it. Love the clip art. But don't save. But yeah, I just thought it was a fun little overlay on it that again, everything starts overfolding and overlaying and coming all together. And it's really, really cool. And again, where you have the levels of what Lucas is talking about and putting the things into it, you also
You know what I think is so interesting about this kind of conversation is this, because when we're globers or ballers or being indoctrinated or whatever, we think that we're told that everything is just there because of chance or these kind of supernova whatever, and then these balls kind of somehow becoming balls. It's like it's all this kind of misshapen forms, right? It's all this
Right.
kind of weird random misshapen shit and the forces of nature, whatever, gravity, bring it to. But when you start looking, it's no misshapen form.
it's
Everything
all
is
perfect.
It's getting more and more. The more you look at it, the more geometric it seems to become, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you go into the microscopic world, like you with your experience in gemology, you know very well the structures of stones and how they're absolutely.
It's fractal. It's completely fractal. Yeah. And that's why even like when Richard Hoagland years ago, I would look at this stuff and they would do the lineups and it's like, yeah, but this is really how rocks grow and this is what they look like here in miniature. It's like you're taking the things and making them big, but it looks it was weird to me. It was like really weird. They're talking the structures and it's like people don't even see how things grow here in platonic solids.
Right. Yeah. And how quickly it can happen.
And how quickly it happens as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Those. What do you think about those insane crystal caves in Mexico and stuff? What do you think about those things? How they form?
Say that again.
Those massive crystal caves. Have you ever seen?
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah, and they go in there. That's really easy. How they form is again. Think about how snow forms. That when you have temperature and the elements codependent at the growing thing, it will grow out. Just like snowflakes grow perfectly out of it. If it gets cold too quickly, you have sleet and ice balls and hail. But if your temperature stays there right at that perfect temperature where they're growing, you'll get these huge snowflakes. Well, with the crisp underground caverns, what you have is you have the elements and water running through them, and the natural elements present, but you have a heated condition where it's right in that state of going liquid, liquid and gas to solid, and so it's sitting and growing. you're watching it grow, and because the conditions are not cool quickly, again, like it's Giant's Causeway, you've seen the giant basalt columns. That's no different. Volcanoes, again, if it stays warm in the water and everything stays warm around it, they are going to organize and grow. That's what minerals do, is they grow, and they grow in platonic solids, and they're beautiful, and you can watch them grow. You can watch them grow under a microscope. You can make bismuth in the garage, like we did watch on Good Times for All, and you can watch where we made bismuth.
Yeah,
and
we saw
grow
those. There's like a cave or place in England where you can just, it's like this mineralized water that drips from the spring, and you just hang anything on a thread, and within, I guess, weeks, it turns into stone.
Right, it will, and solidify. As far as the trees, people, and are we walking on giants? Of course we are. We were out rock hunting earlier. Yes. If especially around water, what happens is the temperatures right as the tree is decaying and it's getting overhit with water, crystals are filling that whole area. Quartz and everything are taking the shape. They're mimicking, but they're growing from the elements of the putrefying tree and then growing as rock. And yes, they are turning to stone. We used to, in Catholicism, beatification or becoming a saint is turning to stone, and how they checked for a saint was if their body petrified instead of putrefied, it got more beautiful. It's beatification. You turn into rock or stone, and that's why they have the little relics or bones of their saints in their churches, which is really, really dark.
Really
but that's
weird.
Where that came. That is weird, but that's where it came about. Is they thought that these people had greatness because they turned to stone instead of their bodies putrefying.
Yeah, I see in Portugal they have lots of these relics. Also here, I've been to some Catholic churches here that they have them. Really, really
Catholic too, and taking all of your universal stuff in. Catholic just means universal, and it was the Jesuits and the Catholics that, again, every religion, everything was flat Earth. Look around you. Why would you think that you were on a spinning water ball? We could, go into again how it is embedded when you're so young that again you're programmed to reject it as an adult. But who would look around you and think that you were on a spinning water ball flying through space, and that moon was 92 million miles away or whatever, and really just huge? I mean, nobody in the old days thought that. They're wrong. I mean, nobody would think that. That's a story sold to you. You would not look around at what you're seeing in the sky, and nobody brilliant would look around and come to that conclusion. I'm just telling you.
I just, that's awesome. I just found something so weird right now out of nowhere. I found an article called "Why Are There Underground Jesuit Caves in Europe Filled with Egyptian and Islamic Art?" I was like, what the fuck is this?
That's this, but they were sent to every religion, everything. They embedded all of the schools, China, Hindus or whatever, and they let them keep their deities or that, but they made it so none of the religions work with science, which is universal, which is the Catholic or what they did is they embedded in the universal model or the heliocentric model, which is impossible and doesn't flow with any of the natural religions anywhere on the world. And so they could be Catholic.
It's a one world religion.
They introduced that one world religion.
Beliefs.
It's all based on beliefs, and it's based on the belief that you're on a spinning water ball flying millions of miles through a space. And again,
once they got started with their balls, they could never stop. Once they started in the 16th century making balls, they're all about balls.
People didn't believe that though, and I mean now we're sold into it. But nobody would look around and really think that is the Catholic or Universal Church is the selling of the heliocentric model.
That's what I think. That's why I call it the colonial. That's why I call it the colonial cosmology, because they're really heavy on. You see, even in their church here, the big cathedral here, they had this kind of ego on top of a ball, and like they have this ball that they present as them having control over the ball, right? It's very very weird. There's a museum in Italy, in Florence, which is a museum of science. They have so many globes in there. They tell you the whole shebang of how they started, how they try to push that really hard. once they try to hide the fact that nobody else was using them before, and there are many other questions. But yeah, it's just bizarre. Yeah, these Jesuit caves are bizarre. It's right where we are here. If you see the link there, you'd be surprised. So it's like the ones I showed you before that couldn't possibly be chiseled, and I don't know where they go. But
no, that can be even grown again. We used to know how to do that. But yeah, we can go back to that. It did get late. I'm so sorry. I showed up late and then kept everybody late. Go back to my rocks. Rodrigo, thank you so much for joining our show tonight, our special guest.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, you came up after, and we started having more interesting conversations. I think we could probably go for a long time.
We definitely can.
Hours.
We often do.
I think nobody would feel tired if I did have, it is Friday, so I can justify staying a little bit longer. But it is 3:46 a.m.
Yeah, and I have to get up because guess what? I'm going to Athens, Georgia tomorrow. It looks like with Karen B for the Rock and Mineral Show. Is that right, Karen B in the chat? Oh my God, I'm so happy. I am so happy.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rodrigo. It was a pleasure talking to you, mate.
Oh yeah, guys. Anytime. Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Zach, Josh, and
Yeah, good talking, man.
And Walt.
Walt.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
And
it was a blast.
Cammy, thank you so much for presenting all this stuff for us. It's just awesome. Anytime you have something to say about rocks, I'd love to hear it, and other things, of course. And I want to see, I'm very curious about filters with rocks and all these other things, because you talk about and that's a whole other big issue. You talk about, of course, what you see from the rocks is literally how they, reflect the light, or how their structure incorporates the light and changes the light, and how we can use it to look at the world and see different things is what really fascinates me. Like what you can see beyond the veil with these things, and there's just so much there. Can we show you something?
But she's muted, so we can't hear what she's saying.
Oops. Yep. In the world of little toys, this is a little filter that's got, if you look through the little eyepiece, it's got two itty bitty Polaroid filters in the end of it, and one's facing in one direction, one's facing the other. And when you look at something, it puts the two of them so you can see how it reads it just by looking. Like they have all kinds of little toys. I'll be bringing them to.
What does that do?
This helps you tell you what helps you. They call it Chelsea filter and emerald filter. Before they had the synthetics with emeralds, you used to be able to determine if an emerald was real because of the way that it would break it up into red on the other side compared to like green glass. But then synthetic in gemstones just means that they grew it above ground, not below ground. So they're actually there's a whole specialty called separating sophisticated synthetics. Because what they grow above ground and what they grow below ground are the same chemical composition, are the same hardness, are the same density. It's just the growth markings, not. It gets very, very, very tricky. So this used to be good for telling if something was an emerald, but it's more or less a fun toy anymore. You can look for different phenomena in it, but it's lost its original use with technology. Again, we grow emeralds all of the time, every day of the week.
When I was a kid, I was crazy about kaleidoscopes. That was the thing.
Yes.
I always wanted to get a new one and see.
I love kaleidoscopes.
It's so cool.
They're the best. Agreed. So yeah, with the filters and that, we're looking, and we'll be looking at the sky and that more. Just everybody, just ask for clear skies above me. Except for tomorrow that we're going to the rock show because Karen B is so damn fucking cool.
Oh, enjoy. That sounds absolutely incredible. It's going to be you like a kid in a candy store. I guess that's the metaphor.
Yep.
You're not going to see time go by. I guarantee you.
We're like rocks. Yes. I'll be on my playground, and then Sunday I have those giant Tinker toys coming that I could maybe build geodesic shapes in the platonic solids, Karen. That's what I want to do with it. That's so fun.
Yeah, I'm going to get on that as well. I already have it here. Is $83 a lot of money? 158 pieces?
I did not. I spent $80 and I got 240 pieces. So I would go to I would go to, and mine was called Fort Games, I think, FORTGAMES. It could be just shipping and where you are too. Maybe it's again where you're located. It could be just the same thing. And who knows what's expensive or not. But when talking about doing like with Karen, to how the world works and that, having the platonic solids rig is good. Huh, Karen? Yes. And doing the grid. Yeah. And we want to make the stuff right in 3D, don't we? We want to get inside of it like a fort. I do.
Nice.
That's part of the joy of learning and everything in the hands-on. And
you can make
that's
a big
journey.
Garden tent. You can make a big garden tent, upscale it, and make your hangouts for it.
Yes, you can. You can make your own little tents, your own little forts. And so, yeah, playing is definitely part of the game. That's why Jana was over here, is we were playing, and we had the shovels and that we were out digging. And it was good. It was really, really good. And I knew I was missing the show, and I didn't care. Yes, we do. We did find fossils today, and we found quartz. We found all kinds of amazing pieces today. My whole desk is here. Will just be. Yeah, we had a busy day with the rocks today.
Rocking.
I don't know. Did you guys did that show up on there at all?
A little bit.
Oh, boy, am I bad on live feeding. But yeah.
You got to hold it. You got to hold it steady. Yeah, we see it. Oh, wow.
So, in getting, again, the reflections on things and how they go, Karen, we have to show you some other very, very cool things. It's been busy times. Yeah, we can make a pyramid to put in your backyard with these. This is so much fun. And she has some of these toys at her house too. So me and Karen are going to combine. I got 2 packs.
Wow.
And yeah, we can put a giant pyramid in the backyard. Yes, we can. And guess what we can do, Karen? We can lay out in the sun. And if we get rid of the guys, we can lay out naked. Yes. Just saying.
All right.
That's how to do it.
All right. We're going to end it on that. Hot sex. That's Karen's ending.
As long as they're happy, it don't matter.
Uh-huh.
All right, then let's go ahead and wrap this up. A big shout out to Doc Michael and Allison, both hanging out over there on Telegram. I just went ahead and opened up a voice chat so they can actually listen in to the show and talk amongst themselves. And if I want to, I could just ease that sound up and eavesdrop in, and we could have a little conversation with them. But I'm going to test that after the show, just because I don't want to surprise them. But I was just having a little think earlier on and thought, let me try something and see how it works. So we're going to do that right after the show. So with that, I guess we can get the heck on out of here. Thank you guys so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Rodrigo, please come back anytime.
Well, you guys just let me know, and I will. Thank you, Lucas, for letting me know. And looking forward to seeing you anytime. Just send me anything. I'll take a look. I love taking take a look at new things and learning new things and being told to put in my place, which is very important. You get to learn a little bit more as you go and try to work on yourself as well, which is good. At least for me, I try to realize that I'm being obnoxious. I'm obnoxious too much. I think I need to work on that. So we'll see how it goes.
Well,
and thank you guys for your patience and for your kindness and having me here. And it's been great. So see you soon. I've been falling back on a space crack. I need to kind of bring some. There's just so much of it going on. It's insane. I don't even know where to start when I get started back on it. It's just like, oh my God, this is every day is something where you saw the Chinese send some shit. They put some space station out. Oh my God, man, it's insane. See how that goes too.
It is a mad world. But all right,
love you guys. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Love
you.
y'all.
You guys have a great rest of your weekend. We will see you right back here next week's going to be our last week over here on the Iron Realm Media podcast channel. Fingers crossed, we should be back on the main channel broadcasting the way we should be. So fingers crossed as far as that goes. But we will be back here next week for the Ironworks and the hopefully last episode for a while of Have No Sphere here on this, the backup channel. With that, we shall get the heck out of here. Love you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. Be good. Be well. We love you. Bye-bye.
Peace, guys.